All right, welcome everyone to the STI 5482 eLearning Startup course. I am recording this session as well as all the sessions, and they will be posted later so you can refer back to them because I know everyone's going to be so keen on rewatching the 15 hours we spent together. Just kidding. Now, we're not going to be doing a straight 6-hour Zoom either day. The last session will probably mostly be the 3-hour Zoom because that's going to kind of be a share session. And I know it was listed out in the agenda on Frontline, but just to clarify, what we're going to do is we basically have 6 hours today, like 9 to 3, and then 9 to 3 tomorrow. And then the project for this class is Thursday from 3 to 6, where that's just gonna be like sort of a giant share out, tossing around ideas, sort of reflections, what we've played around with, things like that, figuring that that would kind of be a little bit more useful in this context than actually creating like a specific set of things, because that way a lot of this may just be talking through stuff. And that was sort of the impetus for this course. Was when we pitched it, it was, I believe, prior to the initial plan of like the high school being all remote and elementary being split between the buildings and high school. And then we sort of refined the plan when we were that A-B model where we were going to be alternating days at the elementary school. And now we're sort of on plan number 3. So this course was sort of intentionally designed to be a little bit flexible regardless of what the original plan was, which is good because things have been changing, but then also too, it gives you the opportunity to be flexible with it. And maybe the project is just sitting there and a list of ideas that you're going to try out. So we'll see. There will be breaks throughout this day where there'll be independent work and things like that, where you kind of go off, try some things and then come back and we'll talk about it. And it's going to be sort of somewhat informal in the sense that I want this to be useful to everyone, and I want this to take sort of natural tangents and flow where it needs to go, because we are down to the wire, and we're down to a couple of days before this stuff gets real. So, any questions before I get started? Cool. All right. So, first thing is, I think that everybody needs to own a shirt that looks like this, because I think that is the best way to be on Zooms. I don't own it currently, but I have ordered it and it is on its way, because I feel like from here on out, I am only going to wear this t-shirt on Zooms because it's the most appropriate, especially for specials teachers, because we're going to be only on Zoom. So I think we need you're on mute t-shirts. Anywho, so that's a little bit of levity for the morning. So let me jump back and actually show you my actual screen. So I sent out last night the email with a link to the blog post that has the agenda, and it had that Google form. Did that for a number of reasons. One is I use my blog for everything to keep myself organized, but it's also a bit of a resource repository. So I wanted to make sure that anyone who wasn't familiar with the blog went to it and sort of knew where it was. So what I do on this blog is to give you the dime tour of it. Now this relates to the e-learning because this is all e-learning. What I've always done is I've always posted things online. I don't like to have things sort of sequestered behind, sharing settings and stuff. As long as things are safe to publish, I want to publish them, because then I have a massive repository of things. And that's kind of where want you guys to start thinking about these things is, instead of having the binders of your lesson plans or those sort of boxes that everyone used to bring home of, folders, manila folders filled with, unit clippings and sort of ongoing artifacts that you've collected over the years. Now we got to start moving that digital. So that way you'll always have access to it and you won't have to like go into your basement and sort of dig it out and dust it off. So I use this blog, and it's something I've always done from before I came to Scarsdale. I was sort of big into blogging when I taught in the city, is I use it just to post stuff. So on the main page, and I use the term stuff purposely because it's not just tutorials or it's not just resources, it's sort of everything. So there are some blog posts, 4th grade PSAs. This is a blog post that talks about the 4th grade PSAs, the projects we did with 4th graders, a little bit of an outline of what it was, and then we actually have a YouTube playlist of all the PSAs the kids created. So not only does this become a sharing opportunity for the kids, and we can think about these sharing opportunities in the way like parents would come in for a share, something like having this online, everything digital allows you to have virtual shares that are rather simple. The other thing this does is it creates a mentor text for the next year. So going forward, I don't need to think back to what I did. I just literally go back to my blog and I say, oh, with fourth grade PSAs, that's what they look like. So you can drive students to it. So that's kind of the core underlying current of this class, is thinking and switching thought process to whatever we plan and whatever we prepare and whatever we build, keep it organized digitally so it'll be easy to refer back to, easy to send people to, easy to reference, and then easy to reuse. Because the thing is, you guys created the spring. So in theory, if we are sort of still in a hybrid, or if we are in a fully remote situation in the spring, a lot of what you will use should already roughly be created. Now, there's always fine tuning and there's always tweaking you have to do, which is why, excuse me, like throughout the years, if you scroll down, like you'll see other fourth grade PSAs posts that are a little bit different. You know, we change up the requirements every year, things like that. Blog post, though, also has tutorials for teachers, parents, students. I know we have some, you know, sort of K-1-2 folks on here. We're going to be using Seesaw. So there's that. This is an old one. These are the types of things I'll be updating. You know, our poetry festival. So you can use my blog, if you would like, as a resource for yourselves throughout this process, or as sort of a framework for how you might organize your own resources or your own content for later recall. And, you know, I toss up things, Matholia, trouble with flash games. A lot of the spring posts were obviously tutorial based, different logging in, you know, but then as you go back, I mean, I would use it for commenting practice with kids, different things. So up along the top bar, I have all the things that I've done. So the STI one is here. It takes you to this page. So again, this isn't just about making you go to my blog because I want you to go to my blog. It's also about thinking about the organization, because so much of what we're going to do is organization, is that this is one place with lower levels, right? There's the home page. There's an about page. I have these sub pages. So think about this blog, and the way this is looking right now is sort of an overview of how you should be thinking about your organization. Like, what's that one place where you're putting things? And then how are you then organizing things below it? Because that's going to allow you to have everything in that one place, and it's going to be self-contained. And we're going to talk about the difference between like this everything in one place that kind of the public is hearing about versus what it actually means in practice. Because in my opinion, sort of how we're thinking about it for what we're telling parents about things being in one place is a bit of a misnomer. And it's a bit further down the chain than it actually needs to be. But so this is the page. So the agenda, literally just copy and pasted from Frontline, just in case anyone was curious about what we're doing. The participant forum, wanted to get a little bit of feedback, but then also it gives me an opportunity to talk about forums as a way to gather information and how you want to kind of be careful with forums and how you structure forums. Resources slideshow for the course, just jump through, it's got some links. Big thing is this preface. Now, while we're going through this, I'm going to kind of be referencing last spring and then this fall as similar yet different situations, because last spring we got thrust into remote learning on a Sunday night, and there was little to no preparation, little to no planning. Some students had devices at home, some didn't. We loaned some devices, but some kindergartners ended up with Chromebooks. Like, it was sort of haphazard, but we did what we could and we got through it. We're a little bit more planned and prepared this time, so every student's getting their own device. That said, you still want to always work on the premise and the notion that within Scarsdale and within your work environment, you want to be using Chrome. Always, 100% of the time. What happens is when you don't use Chrome, things conflict and things don't work right. Now, I'm sure, I've had conversations with parents in the past where they talk about, well, but Chrome uses too much of my processor, Chrome drains the battery, and those are all true. Chrome is a very processor intense thing. It like if you have a lot of tabs open in Chrome, like the fan on your computer will start going, it's intense. But it's a necessary evil because it keeps us contained within our working environment. There's also things that we as a district give out to you as teachers, but also students, that doesn't work in Safari or Firefox. It just doesn't. It has to be in Chrome. The other thing is the people feature is really important because oftentimes folks will go into Chrome, and what they'll do is in the top right-hand corner of the page, you might have to move our little zoom heads out of the way to see it. See the 9 boxes, right? Then next to that is this head, and it has my user account. And then it'll say add another account. Do not do this. Do not. Because what'll happen is this other account will essentially live underneath or within your Scarsdale browser window. And what that means is your permissions will conflict. Or these little icons right here next to the address bar or the omnibar are your extensions. And these are the things that add value to Chrome that the district gives you. If you have your personal Gmail here and then you add your school Gmail, you are not going to get the extensions that we give you. You're going to have permission conflicts. Last year, this was a huge deal with students because they'd say, well, but I'm logged into my laptop, but yeah, I went and I added an account. Why don't I see Cami or why don't I see Screencastify? It's like, well, because your window is your personal one and you added a user within that personal one. Don't do that. What you do is you add people. Now, I have all these different people up here for a number of reasons. One is I test things out. I demo things with students. Students ask me to troubleshoot. I troubleshoot. I also have my children. So like, here's my daughter. There's my son. Now, if you look at this, you see I have my extensions. I have my bookmark folders. If I were to switch over to my son, it's going to open up a new browser window. And you can see that they're different. They're entirely different, right? His is red. He has a different background on his Google screen. He has a different set of bookmarks. He has different extensions. By using the people feature, you make sure you keep your users separate. This isn't going to be that big a deal for students this year because we're giving them their district-owned device, and it's basically on your district device, you have just you, nobody else. But this is still an issue for teachers because you may be logged in to your personal Gmail up here, and if you went here and you went to add another account, and then you went to your Scarsdale one, you may have trouble joining a Zoom that's restricted. Like this particular Zoom call we're on is restricted to only users with Scarsdale IDs. It's possible you have a personal Zoom account. And it's possible that this main user in this window is logged into a personal one, which then gives you a conflict. Because even though these tabs act separately, they still take the overall browser user and permissions, whatever's at the top level. So essentially you want nothing under here. You want just one account. So on the Mac, it's the people feature. On the PC, it would be in Chrome, whoops, and it's next to the 3 dots. You have this other little tiny head. And then same thing, you could see all the people, and then way at the bottom, there's an add with a plus button. All those directions and steps are in here. So you can sort of flip through to get it. It keeps everything separate and it keeps everything contained. You really have to think about, and the reason why they call it people versus account leads you to believe that it's one person with multiple accounts. Technically, your school account and your home account are 2 different people because there's different permissions with your school account than with your home account. There's different access, there's different abilities, there's different restrictions. So you have to think to yourself, and I always told the kids this too, is that like, it's not two different accounts for the same user. You are two distinct people as far as Google is concerned, because one may be a personal Gmail, but the other is a Scarsdale one, which is a lot different in terms of back-end management. So always use the people feature. Cool. And we'll go through this. Eventually the session recordings will be up here. And what I do is I do pause these. I don't chop them up because I don't have that kind of time. So the recording is maybe 3 hours long or whatever it is, but hey, it's there. So we'll start with the organization, and that people feature is a big part of that organization because it's going to help you keep things contained to just your Scarsdale person and not your actual other Gmail person. Any questions so far?
Chris, if we already have people, like we shouldn't, how do you get rid of them?
So
Not people, you know what I'm saying? Like things
accounts. Yeah, add accounts. When you go into that, and this is one of those ironies about the way I do things, is I can't even show you because I don't have it. But if you did add another account, what you would do is you would have, there'd be a manage account button there, and then you can click manage accounts and you can remove those other accounts. In a pinch, what you can do is you could always come up to the three dots and you can go to settings. And what you can basically do is way at the bottom, you can go to advanced settings. Like if your browser was totally messed up and you had total conflicts, you could restore to original and it will basically wipe out every account that's been signed in. Now don't freak out about that because your data is synced. And the reason why you turn on sync is because, actually I should have kept sharing. You'll notice like up here, like it's sync is on. What that means is these bookmarks are not on this browser. They are on my Google account. So no matter what browser I sign into, once I turn on sync, I get all of my bookmarks back. I get my extensions, everything is saved. My passwords are saved, everything is saved. The thing about Chrome, which is part of the reason why it takes so much processor and battery and it sort of drains the machine, is that it's backing up everything that you do constantly to your Google account. Like Firefox just saves bookmarks just on that particular machine. Google is, if its sync is on, it's constantly backing up and updating all your stuff. So in a pinch, you could always sort of reset the browser and start fresh. But when you go to that add account, you should be able to manage accounts and you should be able to remove those other users. You could also come in and look in here, and one of these settings I don't have, there's another accounts setting that will list the people and stuff that you have there. So you want to play around in there to turn it off, and you really just want to use the people feature to keep them separate. And it's also nice too, because then you can know that, like if I click on Isabel, I know that this is hers and I can see that difference and I can see that I'm in a different user. So definitely use the people feature. Cool. What else? Any other questions?
Chris, I have a question. Sorry. So
go ahead.
when we use, so I have two accounts, my personal and the Scarsdale, actually three. But if I just went to the people window and it said it didn't say to add. So what am I adding? I'm adding my Gmail account.
So you're on your Mac.
Okay.
You're on your Mac, right? And you went up to the people menu like I have on the screen.
Right.
Up at the top. And then way at the bottom, you go add person.
Person. Okay.
And then when you add person, it'll look like this. It'll open up a new browser window.
Right. It says make Chrome your, okay.
Already a Chrome user, sign in. And then that will then be Lorella Home or Lorella Work or whatever.
And I should sign out of the other account. And then this will clear up everything.
No. You're making a new person, and you'll make a new person, and you'll make this your, Scarsdale one. And then when you come back to the other person, when you come back to your other user up here,
Uh-huh.
you can either sign out of that person and then re-sign in, or when you come over here and you go to that new Google tab, you'll have a manage accounts.
Right. That I have. Okay.
Right. So then you can remove that. The idea is that when you come to the face next to the 9 boxes, you only have one account listed, just your work account. And then up here, you would potentially have 2.
Okay.
Right. I have a bunch because I keep adding accounts because I keep having to do demos and stuff like that. So I keep walking through. And then, like I said, I'll use students to test accounts, or I'll add them as a person. Because
And
one of the,
and does Google, so for bookmarks, does it condense all the bookmarks, or does it do it separately when you said, so will it condense my bookmarks from my personal account?
nope.
No. Okay.
No, it keeps them separate. And
It's
that's
separate. Everything's separate.
And
Okay.
that's the thing. And that's part of the problem is, like, if I come over here and I come over to this one, this is the, my management one. I have no bookmarks here. But if I come over here and if I were to, I'm not even signed into it, but if I were to come here and if I were to add an account and I were to bookmark something, it doesn't necessarily get bookmarked to my work one. It bookmarked to this other one because this is the browser.
Right.
That's why, like, sometimes people will be like, well, I've saved the site, but I can't find it. I bookmarked it. Well, that's because you were probably on your personal person and you bookmarked it. So even though you thought you were logged in as you because you were checking your work Gmail, the browser window as a whole was that other account. So that's why it's really important to make sure that you're using just the people feature to toggle between the two and to not be adding another account over here.
Great.
It keeps them wholly separate. And when you turn on sync, it syncs the data, meaning it will sync just your Scarsdale data to your Scarsdale account. And then on your personal one, it'll just sync your personal stuff to your personal account. And it keeps it all separate. And that's what we want, because no problem. That'll help with that management of wondering, like, where stuff is. Oh, I thought I saved it here. I thought it was there. It helps with that.
Yeah, I feel like I missed Google 101 at some point when we just got thrown into everything.
Yeah, and
so the basics, are really important.
Yeah. So what we do now is we will take a look at the organized thing. Now, organization is, and what we'll do too is, I know there's a few questions in the chat about, a little tech support on that Google Chrome thing. What we'll do is when we go to take a break and you guys do some independent work, I'll hang out for a little bit and I'll kind of keep the call open, and then we can sort of do individual troubleshooting and working people through some stuff. So I have in here, Calendar and Drive. And it's one of those things that oftentimes people overthink the technology. Google gives us like 3 main apps that are literally designed for the 3 most important things we're going to do. Gmail is the communication app. Like, one of the reasons why we turned on Gmail for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade was we need to be able to communicate with 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. Why try to find a solution? At one point people are like, well, but I post comments in Seesaw, or, well, there's a chat in Google Classroom. It's like, right, but none of those are a direct communication app. And we literally have access to one. It's Gmail. Same thing with a calendar. From an organizational standpoint, people will say, well, but I can make a Google Doc and I can share it with kids. And it's like, or you can use the literal scheduling app that Google gives you to schedule. And we'll talk a little bit more about calendar in a minute, because Drive is the same thing. Like, they give us a file management app. Google Drive is a file management, a file organization app. Like, that's what it's designed for. It's designed to keep you organized and to keep your stuff together. So a lot of this e-learning stuff is not about like the newfangled app or the thing that somebody posted on Instagram or whatever. A lot of this is really just leveraging the simple tools that you already have and using the right tool for the job. There is no one thing. Like, there isn't. The one thing and I'll stop this just for a quick second. The one thing that we have is not Seesaw, it's not Google Classroom, it's not Hapara, it's none of those things. The one thing, the top of the food chain, that this year K-12 has the one thing, it's the Google account. It's that @scarsdaleschools.org account. Kindergartners have always had it, but we've never used it as a Google account, K and 1. We always just sort of reference it as their username. But this year, we are going to use it as a Google account. So they will be able to sign in with Google or sign into their Active Directory. That's sort of the login screen with the high school. The one thing we all have is access to that Google account. Now, 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders will still have email. 2nd graders won't have email, but they'll still have Calendar and Drive. K and 1, we're sort of fine-tuning what we want, but odds are they'll at least have Calendar. So in theory, and I know a kindergartner is not necessarily checking their calendar. However, a kindergartner's parents will be facilitating them looking at their calendar. So using these places that are built in and designed for those purposes is the best thing to do. Because even if you say, well, but we're only going to use Seesaw in 2nd grade, fine, but Seesaw doesn't have a scheduler. There's no calendar in Seesaw, right? Seesaw doesn't have Brain Pop. You got to go out of Seesaw to go to Brain Pop. You want to use IXL. IXL isn't in Seesaw, it's somewhere else. So what you have to start doing is start thinking about those apps like Seesaw and Google Sites and Hapara and Google Classroom. Those are not the one place, because you're directing them to a litany, a wide array of places. The Google account is the one thing. That is the one consistent thing that every child has and teacher, K-12. And they're going to be signing with that. K and 1, we're going to get more into detail, like with your building computer teachers, about the fact that they actually have long passwords now. They don't have their super simple password. They have a more complex password to keep things separate. But parents will be given that via Infinite Campus. They'll be getting an email that says your child's Google account this is their password. So the parents will have access to that. From the device standpoint, one of those things we'll do in the very beginning is sign into them. Make sure the kids log in, 3rd, 4th, 5th, make sure they can log into their Chromebooks, done. K1, 2, make sure they can open up their Seesaw app, their Google Calendar app, get them signed in, done. Those are going to be your rules and routines of the first week, getting them in, because the Google account is the one thing that connects everything else. Cool. So now, from an organizational standpoint, there are lots of ways you can organize. Some people are more organized than others. I have a tendency to be either hyper organized or a complete and utter disaster. I don't really have a middle ground. So I'll show you my hyper organized disaster. So this is my drive. Anything I do in here can go elsewhere. You can make something in here that you post to Seesaw. You could put stuff in here that you post to Google Classroom, that you push out via Hapara, that you print. Essentially, everything you do should originate in Google Drive, because this is where you can type your lesson plans. This is where you can gather resources. This is where you can add PDF files, upload images, do whatever you want. Drive is your main organizational bucket. I am a bit of a dork, so I have things like folders, like my teaching folder. This is last year's teaching folder. Every year, I make a new teaching folder. I haven't made one yet for this year because my OCD says I don't start making it to the first day of school. That keeps me organized. User lists I did make already, because as computer teachers, we have early access to some rosters and stuff, so we can start populating Seesaw and Tinker, and so we can start making, certain apps that aren't automated. We have to manually roster by hand. So I keep all those user lists in here. But if I go take a look at my teaching folder, every year I would make a folder like this for that school year. And then I make a grade level folder. And then obviously as time goes on, you find other things to do. Like for instance, I made this COVID closure one. What I then do is, now from a classroom teacher standpoint, this could be ELA, science, social studies, math, right? You could break it down by content area. Your middle school, let's say you're crossing grades in middle school, you can do 6th, 7th, 8th, or maybe you're, just a math teacher in the middle school and you break it down by sections, something like that. You figure out your own, but you can have these things organized, because then what I do is, so like if I go into 1st grade, I just have things I've done with 1st grade. Now there's not a lot in here because I don't use Google with 1st grade. We use things like Seesaw and Wixie. So a lot of that stuff lives in Seesaw or Wixie. But if I come back out and I go to like 4th grade, I then break it down by teacher. So that way, and then these things out here, I leave out here are sort of generic 4th grade things. But if I break this down by teacher, then I can go into like Ms. Rago's folder, and then I can see what I've done with her. So when I start a new project, I'm going to do it with Ms. Rago's class, I make a new folder. I can have these demo versions in here of things I want the students to do. I make them in here when I am demoing them, when I'm doing like the mini lesson for the kids. And that's how I know I did that with them, because it lives in their folder. Now, my construct is different than a lot of you who are classroom teachers. You guys are sort of that one group, but you have different subjects. I'm teaching K-5, so I'm teaching different classes. So I'm potentially repeating a lesson 3 periods in a row, or I'm doing 3 completely different lessons, across grades. So this helps me stay organized, because I know that all I have to do, and before Ms. Rago walked in, I realize no one's walking in a room now, I would open up her folder and get a sense of where I am. Like, oh, we're going to work on the practice ignite. Cool. We already made it. So I know that we can review a certain element of it, but then I know we're moving forward. But if I were to come into like Mr. Card's class, see, practice ignite. So that way I know I can look and I can see that I have consistency across those classes. Now that would track to a general ed classroom teacher, or like a secondary single subject thing, in that you want to make sure that you're making these either section folders or subject or unit folders. This might be ELA, and then this might be, reading the weather, reading the world. And then you can have a sense of what have I created, where am I, and also upload your resources to it. So it's not just about the demo lessons for the kids or the mini lesson examples. Put all of your resources related to that unit in that place. That way you'll be able to find it easily. And then as you come out, you say, okay, things change, right? We did CAMI last year in the spring. So I made a CAMI demo folder, but I kept it in my teaching folder because it was related to that year. And it's keeping that level of sort of somewhat hyper organization that will help keep things more accessible. Everyone good so far? Any questions? All right, now, hopefully, or maybe not, but you may have noticed in looking at this teaching folder, there is a folder in there that I don't own. It's owned by Paul Tamazawa. It's at District Shared Lessons. You do not just have to put things into your folder that you create. You can move things from shared with me into your folder. Doesn't change ownership, still owned by the original owner, but it allows you to organize it. Oftentimes people will say, how do I organize shared with me? Like, this is a mess, I hate it, I delete stuff from here. It's like, no. Ignore shared with me. Shared with me doesn't exist, because these are all shared by different people. These things all exist in somebody else's drive. Shared with me is organized. It's a folder. It is essentially a folder showing you all the things you have access to from other people. This is it. You can't delete something from here because you delete it. Well, it's shared with you. You still have access to it, right? Conceptually, like you don't control the sharing access to somebody else's file. But what you can do is you can take things from here and you can move them over. So let's see here. There's, I'm not going to do the student accounts, even though I'm sure all of you would like to see what's in the student accounts. But if I wanted to take this, transferring Apple files with AirDrop from Paul, if I come over here and I click on My Drive, I lose access to shared with me. I don't lose access, but just it changes my folder view. I come over here, what I do is I say, all right, this is the one I want to move. This is the one I want to take somewhere else. Next to My Drive, you have this little drop-down arrow. Just open it up and give it a second, because if you're like me, you have 3,700 folders. It takes a second. So then you have these different folders. Now, if I wanted to, what I'll do is I'm going to put it in last year's folder just as a demo, and then I'll move it out. I take this, I just press and hold, and I drag it over to this teaching folder, and it drops it in there. It does not remove it from shared with me because it's still shared with me. Like it is still Paul's file that he shared with me. So it will always live in shared with me because that's what it is. It's shared with me. But now if I go to this folder that I put it into, I can scroll down and you'll notice towards here at the bottom, transferring Apple files with AirDrop. I now have it in there. Now, Google has gotten a little bit different in how it looks these days. You'll notice that it's actually a shortcut. It's got the old school, like Microsoft Windows little arrow. Because even though it's not showing the owner, it's letting you know that you don't own this, that this is a shortcut to somewhere else. So that's all that's doing. So then if you wanted to, you didn't want this here, you can click on it and remove it. It just removes the shortcut. It does not remove the file from Paul's drive. It doesn't even remove my access to Paul's file. It just removes that shortcut. That's it. But it's a way for you to organize those things that other people give you access to. Drag them into your folder and have them organized. You can also do this with your own files. So let's say I want to take, we'll take this humorous interlude file. So this was a humorous interlude based on the beard file. I'll do this real fast as a humorous interlude since I'm bringing it up. What I did was, and then we'll talk about how you can do these types of things quickly. That was the beard at the beginning of lockdown, and and then we went through a humorous little thing. So what I did was I actually turned that into a GIF, and I posted it. So the kids got a kick out of that. And we'll get into how you can do little quick things like that. But what you can do is you can have your file in multiple places. So you're sitting there going, well, but like I teach this one thing, but I do it in 2 different sections or whatever. If you click on a file and do Shift Z, it'll bring up so the file is still highlighted. It brings up this box. It looks kind of like a move to box, except it's not. It's an add. So you can add a shortcut to this file to somewhere else. So this lives in my teaching folder from last year, but I can come into my drive. Takes a second to load because I got a million folders, and I can scroll down. Let's go down to my, we'll go to my PD folder, and we'll go to my STI folder. We'll go to my eLearning startup folder, and there's this class. So you see, I have everything organized in those layers, those steps down. So I know, even if I don't remember necessarily what I called something, if I know it was an STI class, I know it's in my STI folder. And I know that lives within my PD folder because there's also stacks and there's, you know, superintendent conference days or whatever it is. So what I can do is this is this class folder. I can even go into it and see what else is in there. And I can add here. So now it's still here, hasn't moved, but what I've done is I've added it to my other folder. Do a search, come in here. And what's nice about searching in Drive is it's Google. Google is a search engine, so it's easy to find stuff. And there it is. It is the same file. It is not a different one. It is not a copy of one. The same file is visible in two places. So it doesn't matter which one I open, it's the same file. It's basically just it's an icon. So when you double click on it, it opens up that one file. So it doesn't matter where you make an edit to it, it's the same file. So again, that's another way of staying organized where you might have stuff coming in from curriculum coordinators or department chairs or instructional coaches, whatever it may be. Some's in Share With Me, some's in your Drive. Make your folders how you want to organize. You build your structure how your structure makes sense to you. And then you organize all of these things inside of your own structure. Because like that example with the stuff that Paul shared, it doesn't affect his structure. It doesn't affect his organization. I've just taken it and I've put it where it makes sense to me. Cool. Awesome. Any questions so far? All right, now, one thing related to this is the ability to add things from outside of the ecosystem. So Google Drive, from an organizational standpoint and a practical use standpoint, is a giant bucket. It's just that Tupperware bucket in your basement, right? You can stick anything in that Tupperware bucket. You know where it is. It's in that bucket. It's in your basement. Doesn't mean that thing is going to work in the Tupperware in your basement. Like you may have to take it out of the Tupperware and bring it upstairs and plug it in to get it to work. Same holds true for Google Drive. You can stick anything in Drive, but only some things will work in Drive. So what I mean by that is this. If, and here, we'll do it in here. And what I'll do is I'm going to open up, and I know I haven't shared my screen yet, but I'm going to open up Keynote. So what I'm going to do is I have Keynote. Now, Keynote is running off of my desktop. Right? I'm just going to make a new one. And here, let's just choose a basic theme. And we'll call it, what is this? 5482. Demo me to that. And I'll add a new slide. That one's good. A couple of slides, right? So I now have this file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this. Oops. I have a MacBook Pro, and I always forget about there's that touch bar across the top. And the way I tend to rest my hands is my finger keeps inadvertently hitting the escape button because the escape key is no longer like an actual physical key. It's on this little touch bar. So it's kind of annoying. But anyway, that's why occasionally you'll see stuff get funky for me. STI eLearning demo, right? So I have this. Now, if I want to put this in Drive, I certainly can. Just going to click on the little finder, a little smiley face. And I'll go to my documents and I'll look for that STI eLearning demo. It's right here. Right, so this is my Keynote file. I can take it and I can drag it up. There we go. And I get a little plus. It's going to drop it. Now you notice it actually says .key. So it recognizes that it's a Keynote file. But notice it didn't convert it into a slides icon. You know, like if you were to upload a PowerPoint, Google can convert the PowerPoint into a slides file. This can't. Google Drive can't. Now, if I double click on this, I'm going to see the first slide. I can't navigate through this presentation. I just see the first slide, and I can't edit the first slide. If I need to do this, if I want to work on this, I got to either control click on it and download, or use my three dots and download. So this is an example of the organization aspect of Drive, if not the usability aspect of Drive. This is that bucket in your basement, right? I tossed a whole bunch of stuff in here, but I put the blender in the bucket. Well, I can't use the blender in the bucket. I got to take the blender out of the bucket, bring it upstairs and plug it in. So same idea. Some things you can use inside of the bucket, right? You stick a notebook in the bucket, you can write on the notebook inside the bucket in your basement. Can't do it with some files. Google is happy to hold on to that file for you. It just won't let you use it inside of Drive. Another example of that are like Smart Notebook files. You could certainly save Smart Notebook files into Drive. You just can't run them out of Drive, and they won't function as Smart Notebook files in Drive. You have to download them. And then if you make a change to it, you want to erase the one that's in Drive, because if I were to take this now and download this, and let's say I make a change to it, and we'll call it version 2. Right now, it's still the same name because, now here's where it gets a little bit tricky from an organizational standpoint. I have 2 files on my computer with the same name. Anyone know why I do not have a name conflict? Why is there not like an issue with 2 files with the same name? Or why did it not put a 1 in parentheses around it? Does anyone know? This is one of those little organizational nuggets. When I made my first one, and see they're both the same thing, right? It's 2 subtle differences. If you notice, this one doesn't have the .key extension on it. It's there, but it's hidden. Google extracts it. Google recognizes that it's there and shows it. So that's a subtle difference between the 2. The other difference is this one I saved in my documents folder, right? This is the one I made and saved. This one is the one I downloaded. So this one is in my downloads folder. They're in different folders. So you can have files with the same name on your computer. You got to be careful about it though, because you got to know where they originate from and where they're located. And then I can come over here and I can now take this, and then you'll notice it's right here. And this is the one. Oh, my trackpad gets funky. I'm going to drop this over here. It's uploading in the bottom right-hand corner. You can see it. Now, you might have to move our Zoom heads out of the way, but in the bottom right-hand corner of my screen, it says 2 uploads complete. But it recognizes that it's the same name. So it asks me, do I want to keep them separate? So Google recognizes that even though on my machine they came from the same place, Google is like, wait a second, you're trying to upload a file with same name, like what's going on? You can click, it'll overwrite by default or you can keep a separate file. And then it does this little number 1 in parentheses. And that's what the Mac does when there's multiple files in the same location. So like if you downloaded something a bunch of times to your downloads folder with the same name, you'll see a parentheses with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The original one never has a number next to it. The 1 is the first duplicate. So that's a way when you're looking in your downloads folder, you're like, I thought I downloaded this thing from TC, or I thought I downloaded this math workbook already. If you see like 4 of them in there, you're like, oh yeah, I just downloaded it 4 times. The one without the number is the original. Each one is the number of duplicate, which can be helpful if you're downloading something that changes regularly. So like you're in TC, you're in a social studies thing, you're in a current events website that has PDFs or something, and you're downloading them like once a week. They may have the same name, but the higher the number would be the most recent version of that. The one without the number is the original. So again, that's another way to make sure you're staying organized, is by recognizing the difference and the quirks to file names and why certain things may be named certain ways. But if I click on this one, this is the one that's V2. Again, I can't edit it. I can't do anything with it, but I have it. I can store it. So again, that goes to that organization. Don't think that just because you have something that's not slides or sheets or docs that you can't store it and organize it in Drive. You certainly can. And you don't have to drag and drop like I just did. You could even just click the new button and you can do a file upload. And then just choose the file, figure out where it is, click it, you can upload it. If I wanted to upload, you're on mute, I can click that and I can upload it. You can also upload entire folders. So if you already have a level of organization on your desktop and you're like, well, but I prefer my desktop better, I don't really use Drive, whatever, you don't have to change. If you have a structure in place already, just upload a whole folder. It will upload all the folders underneath it too. So if you already built on your desktop some sort of organization where you have a file, where you have a folder with a bunch of folders underneath, upload it. It'll bring everything with it. It won't just bring that top folder. It'll bring everything that it has underneath it, including all subfolders, all files, all things like that. So that's like also an easy way to back stuff up. Like you have a bunch of stuff on your computer, you can literally just drag a single folder up to Drive. It may take a little while. This little upload thing in the bottom right-hand corner may not be, 2 seconds to upload an image. It may take 20 minutes if you got 150, 200 files in there and there's videos and whatever, but you have the ability to do it. Cool. Questions, comments, queries? No? Okay. So we're going to go a little bit more, and then I'm going to send you off on your little independent activity. And what we're going to do is we're going to take a look, still with the organization, about the fact that you can do other stuff. Most people know this, but I always like to touch on it. You have your 3 tops here, right? Docs, sheets, slides, word processor, spreadsheet, presentation. Under more, you have more stuff. So like we made that Google Forms, Google Drawings, Google Site, like there's a ton of stuff, right? One of the things we're going to talk about is Google Forms, because this is a way, especially now digitally, you can do things like quick exit tickets for the kids, quick assessments, quizzes, things like that, where now you can organize some of that process, some of that paperwork. So if you make a Google form, you would click on it, it would create in here just like I did. I created this form last night. And then, so this is the form, right? So I made these questions. When you're making questions for a form, the organization is really important, because how you organize the questions and how you ask the questions is going to determine the value of the data you get back, or the level of organization and efficiency of the information. So this first one, multiple choice. This one was a checkbox. Now, I use this as a checkbox because I felt like, well, maybe you have somebody who teaches 2 different grades, right? Maybe somebody was going to be on this call that teaches 6th and 7th, but not 8th. So I wanted people to be able to choose multiple things. Causes potentially a problem with sort of organization and efficiency, but I did it on purpose. Same thing with what subject do you teach? Now, this is a slightly different question. Short answer. I could have listed every possible subject, but I might have missed one. And then the most pressing questions. Now, why does this matter in terms of organization? This sort of goes to just the thought process of before you make these digital things, these folders, these organizational structures, before you think about a quiz or an exit ticket, you got to think about sort of the organizational structure of it and how can you most efficiently and effectively set it up so you get the best results with the least amount of effort on the back end. Because if I come to responses, first response, awesome. 81.8% are elementary school. Fantastic. 0 at the high school. Nobody who teaches across level. That was a really quick and easy way to gather some data, right? Multiple choice. Boom. Choose one. That's it. However, the second one gets a little bit funkier. Because the second one, if you were to look at it, and if we were to really dive into the math on it, might have different numbers and percentages, because there could be somebody who chose 2nd and 4th, and then a bunch of people who just chose 2nd and 4th. Like the numbers may not add up the way you expect them to, because I allowed people to choose multiple things. And in addition, when you start doing this with sort of at scale, where there's a bunch of multiple choices, you could be over 100%, you could be like well under, like the numbers may be confusing, but that's because you're allowing one person to choose 3, the other person might choose 2, one person might choose 5. It can throw off your information, which in turn, depending on your purpose, now you may want this, you may want to get a sense of the room in general. But if we're talking about sort of organization and efficiency, when doing something like a form, you want to think about what's those data points I'm going to get back, and how can I make them most useful to me? Same thing with subject. Now, the thing I used about subject, and the reason why I used the short answer, is Google is super smart, but Google won't necessarily make decisions on your end, right? Now, I say that because, yes, it will auto-complete sometimes, right? Like you start typing a search, it'll give you a bunch of suggestions, but it won't automatically make decisions for you. And I bring that up because if you look at things like all and all and all, those are essentially the same answer. However, somebody typed it in all caps. That is different than typing it with lowercase l's. 6 people typed it the same way. One person typed it different. So technically, that's 7 responses of the same thing, but in terms of the data back, the organization of it is a little bit wonky, because if I had said all, A-L-L, and I let people choose it, I would have a more accurate representation of that information. One person wrote all content areas. So again, the same answer, but Google's going to interpret this different. And again, this just goes to that thought process that we have as teachers have to have in terms of organization of, if I'm building a structure, and whether that structure is a folder structure, whether it's a Google form, a question, a survey, whatever, I have to think about that organization to say, okay, how is it going to look on the flip side? And am I organizing this and building this in such a way that it may take me a little bit up front, but will it make stuff easier on the back end to deal with and to process and to find and to interpret and all that stuff? And that's why I like forums, because forums, I think, are a good way to kind of demonstrate the pitfalls of disorganization. One art. Now here, oh, look at this, ELA Math. Oh, this certainly sounds like this might be an all curriculum one. So now with this question, I'm having to go through here and say, all right, oh, everything, wait, that's an all. I'm now having to do extra work to figure out and to mine the data to figure out how many people said, oh wait, first grade, I guess that's all. So I guess that's all. Right? So there's actually most of these are, oh, look at that, all lowercase a's. So this is why this goes to that organizational headspace of sometimes giving people too much choice or too open-ended is going to result in disorganization. You know, you want things organized and structured in a certain way, you build them in that way. Now, something like this is where I did want different things because I wanted legit feedback. I wanted people's thoughts. I didn't want to try to couch people's ideas. So there will be times where this isn't disorganized so much as this is useful, because then you could see literally what people wanted and what people said and what people thought. Situations like this and this, you should be structured and you should be organized and say, I'm going to give out the choices so that I can get a more efficient and organized result in the end. And then we will go over these and we'll talk about these. But I wanted to use the form to kind of demonstrate. We are going to talk specifically about these different things, but I also wanted to use the form in terms of an organizational structure and how you can start organizing. So now, what I want you to do for this, now you don't have to do, and I know a lot of times in my classes, you'll make like an STI folder, but what I want you to do is, and then we're going to share afterwards in a little while, people's organizational structures. Remember, this is your organizational structure. You should be organized. But whether that's by unit, whether that's by month, whether like whatever, you got to figure that out for yourself. And we're going to share out the different people's organizational thought processes because it may help. Like some people may struggle with this, and then we'll see how different people organize it. I organized it by school year and then grade levels within that school year and then teachers within those grade levels, because that's what works for me, because that's how I teach and that's how I see kids. It may not work for you. So the number one thing is going to be start with a school year folder. Everyone make a school year folder to at least begin with, and then figure out how you would organize different folders within that school year. Put some files into where they belong. Shift Z to have a file from another folder be added to this new organizational structure that you're setting up for the start of the school year. Drag things from shared with me that you need organized. If you have stuff from a past time, like I have a folder called 5 previous years, and guess what? Like Wednesday, I'm going to change that to be 6 previous years, and I'm going to take my 2019-20 folders and move it into there. So I'm always going to have this sort of archive available to me of previous year stuff that I can always refer back to. But then my current thing is always that current year's folder. So basically set up for yourself an organizational sort of folder management structure with how you might do it. Again, be it content area, section, unit, figure out for yourself, maybe sketch it out on a piece of paper even, how you might make this make sense. Because if we can all look at it and make sense of it, then it's totally going to make sense. Number 2, related to this, make somewhere in that structure a simple Google form with, and now this is even if you're kindergarten, because this, K-8, this is going to matter. Simple Google form, thinking about, let's say not the parents, let's focus on the kids right now. Let's say you wanted the kids to fill out this form. What kind of information do you want to gather from them? And how do you best want it gathered? Because that goes to organization. And this could be how you can get to know your kids, right? If we're all sitting in rooms with masks and we don't have sort of that more collective thing, the collective kind of community aspect, maybe you give out a form where you get a sense of who they are. Maybe you ask them some basic questions, likes, interest, I don't know. Even kindergarten, you could theoretically do this. Obviously, the parents would be helping. But think about 5 questions that you might ask a student in the beginning and how you could build that as an organized form that will give you clean, organized information on the back end. Cool. So it is 10:11, we'll call it 10:10. What I'll do is I'll give you guys 45 minutes for this, because that should give you time to sort of think about how you want to structure it, how you want to organize it, how you might want to build the form. And then what we'll do is when we come back at like 5 minutes to 11, what we'll do is we'll share out and we'll take a look at how people have structured things and the types of questions people have asked, as a way to then help everyone sort of refine their thinking. I will keep the call open. You are welcome to turn off your camera if you want. You're welcome to cut out and then come back at in 45 minutes. Actually, let's just call it let's just call it 11, just a round number. Come back at 11. And I'll keep it open, and if I walk away, I'll be back in a minute. I'll be, poking around the house or whatever. Everyone good? All right. I'm going to pause the recording, and then we'll come back. I'll see you guys at 11. Okay, so welcome back. Bunch of good questions came up during the independent work, which we'll cover in a minute. Actually, you know what? Let me cover that first, and then we'll go through sort of you guys sharing out and seeing some different people's structures. The one thing, and I didn't really talk about this, I wanted to see if people sort of got it or how people interpreted it, but when you're making these folders, like I have my teaching folder. Now, if I wanted to make a new folder, and I'm going to make mine my 20-2021 teaching folder. It puts it right there. And now this is chronological. If you're going to do things like use, number 1, number 2 to keep things at top, you should use 2 digits, because 0, 1, 0, 2, because otherwise if you get to 10 will come before number 1, because 10 is 1, 0. So it would actually show up higher than number 1. So if you're going to number things to keep them at the top, use 2 digits in your numbering. But now, like this teaching folder, now if I go in here as I start my organization, now that I'm in my folder, anything I do, a new folder, I'm going to be adding in this folder. So by being in this folder, so if I create a Google Doc, it's going to create it in this folder. If I do a new folder, it's going to make it inside of this folder. So if I do this, and if I call it subfolder 01, and that numbering works too this way, even if it's at the end. If I had like 10 subfolders, you want to do it like this. Otherwise, subfolder number 10 would show up before subfolder number 1. So this, because I'm in this folder, it made it in here. If I come in here and if I make a file, it's going to make it inside of this folder. And it shows you the structure, the organization. Like this is the folder I'm in. This folder lives in this folder. This folder lives in this folder. That's sort of that organizational structure. You can also see it over here on the left, which we talked a little bit about before with that little drop down where you can then actually open things up and see where things are. Now, these subfolders, they're just folders. They're subfolders in the sense that they live in something else, but they don't have any less value or any less importance or control or anything. It's just an organizational structure. Like you can have folders within folders within folders, and that's fine. They're just folders. So it's just about like prior years. Like if I come over here to this teaching, like I had this teaching folder, and then inside of it was folders for each grade. And then inside each grade was a folder for each teacher. And then inside each teacher was potentially other folders for projects. So the thing is, that way I just have this sort of cascading structure of organization. And then in terms of accessing this, quickly, people will say, like, well, I'm going to bookmark this folder, and then I'm going to bookmark this. I wouldn't bookmark this, because then you're going to have a bazillion of these bookmarks up here. And then every year you're going to click the wrong bookmark, and you're going to wonder why you're going to the wrong folder, because you forgot that you have a bookmark for every year. Drive, just go to Drive. And that's why if you name it something like 2020, like it's going to be the first thing. Like the file cabinet analogy is good, and that like, where your filing cabinet is. It's in your home office. You're in your living room. You don't sit on your couch and press a button and the filing cabinet shows up at your couch. Just like you don't keep your filing cabinet in front of your couch because you don't want it there all the time. But you know where it is. You get up and you just walk over there and you do it. It's an extra click essentially. But that way you click and you have it right here. Then when you know you want to get into it, boom, it's right there and it's organized. And again, same way as like if you do new and you do a doc, it'll create it inside of whatever folder this is. Whenever you do something new, it goes in whatever this says up here. So that's just sort of keeping track with that organization. Related, some people were struggling with the Shift Z in moving a file. In the top right-hand corner where the 3 dots are, sometimes there's a little red circle with an arrow, and that means there's an update for Google Chrome. Oftentimes I found that when stuff stops working the right way and stuff's being hinky, if you update Google Chrome, it usually smooths everything out. It's weird that sometimes normal things will stop working while there's an update there, but it's one of those ghost in the machine type things that, one of those ghosts in the machine type things that happens sometimes. We've seen it a lot with kids too, and this is good to know, is that when they're doing it, like on their Chromebook, their little red dot is not up here in the top right-hand corner. They would have it next to the clock. So like on their taskbar along the bottom on a Chromebook, they have the time. And then if they clicked on that, they would see something that would say like click to update Chrome. So sometimes you need to update the Chromebooks, and it takes not even 60 seconds. I mean, it takes 15 seconds to update. So it's really fast and efficient. But it's something that solves the problems when the problems pop up, usually. So now let me go over to a file here. I'll jump back over here. So now if I click on like this, and I do Shift Z. I know, I heard it as well, babe. We'll figure it out.
Oh, I thought I was on mute.
No, you weren't on mute. So I'm going to move this over here to my subfolder. I'm going to add it here. Now, if I come back, and we'll do some troubleshooting during the next break. If I come over to this, and I go here, so I see it here, right? So it lives in the 2 places. Now, if I double click this and open it up, this is something we haven't talked about, but in terms of Lorella, this kind of goes to your question about like if I have a million tabs open with all these things that I've been looking at, how do I kind of organize them? When you have this particular file open, up here in the top left by the file name, there's this move button. Now move is different than add. Move is literally take it away from someplace, right? You could click on that and then you'll see that this file lives in 2 places. So you're like, oh, awesome. I don't even need to move it. It's exactly where it needs to be. Or if it lives in a shared folder or it lives somewhere else, you can move it. Like, oh, I put that in last year's teaching, not this year's teaching. That's why I'm confused. What you can also do, especially if it's things that have been shared with you and you've opened them up, is this. It looks a little bit different. So let me use Paul's example. So if I open this up, there's this drive icon, and it's basically add shortcut to drive. So if I do that, it'll add it, and then I'll say, where do you want to add it? So like if you've been clicking on a whole bunch of like TC resources, let's say, and you got all these tabs open, and you just view only, and you're like, well, but I don't like it and share it with me, I don't organize it. You can add to drive, and then you can decide where you want to place it. You know, you go in your teaching folder, subfolder, whatever. This also works in terms of if you have this and you're like, wait a second, I want to be able to make some changes to this. Because let's say it's a template that TC gives you, you can't edit it. You go file, make a copy. And in this case, you do entire presentation. This will come up. You say, what do you want the copy to be? You give the copy a name, and then right here, folder, you click on this and you say, okay, I want to go put it in my teaching folder, right? So I'll put this here. I'll put this in my subfolder. This is my copy. And it opens up because now it's a different file. Making a copy is a different file. I now own this. I can still come over here if I wanted to. Like if I wanted to keep this original, I can add this shortcut to Drive, and I can add this in the same folder where that copy is. And then I can come back over to that thing. And in my subfolder, see, I have my copy. This is mine, but I see that this is a shortcut. Right? And that's how Google is handling this now with these shortcuts. So that's how you can say, all right, I got all these tabs open. People have given me all these things. Some things you may be able to just add the shortcut to this folder. Other things, depending on what type of file they are, you may just have to, like if it's something you want to edit, you may have to do file, make a copy, and then move the copy into that folder. It's going to be sort of dependent on the particular type of file that you have. Cool. Now, we'll do a little catch up on forms, and then we'll take a look at everyone's things because I didn't show you some stuff in forms on purpose. I don't want to overwhelm you. I know this is all overwhelming enough without me giving you what every button and every tool does. So I have my form. These things right here I can add, right? Add a question. I can get super fancy and add other stuff. My responses come in here. But what I can also do is I can click this Sheets button, and I can actually get a spreadsheet. Now notice it will make the same file name, but just with the word responses in parentheses at the end. It'll put it in the same place. So you want to make a form, you teach 4 different sections, let's say. You have 4 Google Classrooms you want to put it in. You can make one form. It'll all collect all the results in the one form. When you want to send that form or give that form to somebody, you click the send button. And then you can email it to colleagues, to 5th graders, or you can get the link and put that link into Google Classroom, into Seesaw, into wherever. Or the embed code, and you can copy this code and put it into Google Site. You can put it into a blog, into School Wires, wherever you want to make it accessible. Now, you'll notice that there's this button up here that talks about automatically collecting respondents' Scarsdale Public Schools email address. This is going to help keep things tight and organized. Now, if you notice on the spreadsheet, I did not collect your email addresses. So I made this anonymous because I didn't check any of those boxes. So I have a timestamp, which Google always gives you. So this is good in terms of, let's say you say, all right, I want you guys to complete this quiz by 6 o'clock tonight. You can see what time people did it. I will caution people on doing things like that in these situations and in this sort of hybrid virtual asynchronous things. I know from a scheduling standpoint, we have our sort of locked in blocks of live teaching, whether it be via Zoom or in person, and then sort of that homework stuff. The independent stuff, we're not living in the same construct as we normally are. So if we said, have this done by like 7 o'clock tonight, that may be impossible for the student to do, because maybe they can do the work between 8 and 3, but then after 3 o'clock they have other family obligations, or mom and dad are home and they're at work, and then when they come home their Wi-Fi network can't handle all the devices, or you don't know what that home dynamic is. And since the situations, everyone's dynamic is different, it's not the same as a year ago where you say, all right, listen, hey, by like tonight at whatever time, turn something in, where stuff was a little bit more mellow or sort of a little bit more normal. But also keep in mind that normal is relative, and how we have access to technology at home is different than the kids, and oftentimes. Now, I know we're giving every student a device, but it doesn't mean that after the outside of the 8 to 3 realm that they're going to be able to use that device in the same capacity. So I just caution you on doing like time sensitive things, just because that may put, sort of unanticipated stress or anxiety on a situation that already has a lot going on. Now, beyond that, what you can do is you can go into the gear in the settings. Now, this is where you can do a whole bunch of stuff. And I recommend you do this before you create that spreadsheet. Because right now, if I did collect email addresses and I did save, what it's going to end up doing on this is it's going to end up adding the email address way at the end. See how that did that instantly? And there was my 2+2 when I was doing the validation. You want to set up your form first before you make this spreadsheet. So that way timestamp will always be the first, then you would have the email address, first name, last name, whatever you want to do. And when you're in here, you can also do other things like restrict it to just Scarsdale. You can limit to one response if it's a form or a quiz or like an exit ticket. You can allow them to edit after submit. I let you guys do that if you wanted to. I also let you see a summary of the responses. Now, if this was a quiz, I would want to take those off because I wouldn't want somebody to be able to edit or see a summary of the responses. And then you would hit save, and then that would change the permissions instantly on this form. What you can also do is in here during a presentation, or not during the presentation of the form, presentation sort of should be a lowercase p as opposed to a capital, in the sense that this isn't presentation like Google Slides. This is just how it's presented to the user. Progress bar is if you got a bunch of questions, like let's say you have 25 questions, this could show like where they are in the process after they've answered a bunch, how far along they are. Shuffle question order is cool because what you can do is you can have that set up so that way every student sees the questions, but in different order. You on your side, you get the answers tied to the questions in the order you made them. But this is a way where you can basically mix it up so no two kids are seeing the same order at the same time. And then quizzes. You can make this a quiz if you want by just turning that on. And then you can decide, if you want to lock in the Chromebook, don't do that because, you got to be a little bit flexible. You can release the grade immediately after they want, which is like, yes, you got it right or wrong. For upper grades, you can do the email notifications. Let's see, you can decide, do you want them to see correct answers? Do you want them to see point values? What do you want them to see? Now, if I did this and save, I then now come over here, and then now back on my questions, I have now down here an answer key. So I can choose an answer. I can choose the value of points. This is where I can make it required. If I liked my question, but I wanted to say like, which is the best, which is the worst, I can duplicate it so I don't have to retype it. But this would be where I would make my changes to my quiz. Yeah, click on the question, and then you can actually then see the answer key and stuff like that. Another thing we didn't really talk about, but you can actually rearrange the questions. So like if I came down here to the bottom and I did first name, let's say I wanted that in there, short answer, I can take this little gripper and I can just kind of move it up to the top. Now, since I've already created my spreadsheet with this, when I come over here, first name is going to pop up over here in a minute once it refreshes. So what you got to do is you got to make sure that you sort of organize this before. You usually got to click out and then it should show up here in a second. But you want to organize your thing before you create that spreadsheet, so then you'll have a nice clean list of everything in there. And then you can have the total points. Then you can look at the responses by point values, summary for each question, things like that. Cool. So I think that was sort of the basics of some of the feedback I was getting while people were working. Any questions based on the new information I just showed you?
Chris, I have a question regarding
Yeah.
for our level for second grade, taking the link and creating a seesaw activity. I think I know the answer, but I'm not positive. So Glenn and I just walked through it, and I copy and pasted the link into a new seesaw activity. But when I clicked the green check, the template was a Google login page, and I'm assuming that's because we don't have our lists and the students signed in with Google into their seesaw.
Correct. So
Okay.
what you're going to do is, for this would be one of those things where like we'll do this like the second week of school, right? Like let's make sure that they get into they get logged into Google on their iPads, they get logged into Seesaw with Google. Then by doing and sharing, like with the Scarsdale Schools thing, then
Yeah.
that should facilitate
Okay.
them being fine.
Okay.
What we'll also do, which we'll talk about sort of next, is calendar, because everyone will have access to calendar. So even if they don't have email K1, 2, you can still sort of, there'll be apps on their iPad, Google apps that they'll be signed into. So that will then help facilitate and ease that sort of seamless transition between the different platforms.
So what will it look like for the students once they are signed into their Seesaw account using Google? When they go to the activity, what will the template look like? Will it just show? Will it look like the first page of the Google form? They click the link and it will take them outside to the actual form. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
It'll actually like launch Chrome or Safari.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep. No problem. What else? Any other questions? Anyone want to share the organization that they were working on, or what I know some of you guys were working on grade level organization.
I'm happy to.
Yeah, go for it.
Do I have a?
Yes.
Okay.
The ability. Yes. You have the power.
So Glenn and I are the only two teachers on second grade in our building this year. So we just quickly created, let me move this out of the way, quickly created a 2021 folder in my drive. And then under that folder, we created one for each curriculum area. And then I shared this with Glenn so that we both have access to it and can, add to it. And then under math, for instance, we added a resources folder. I already took a file of 100 chart and just dumped it in there to have. I tried making a link to a reading log that was in another place in resources. So far we've just created a folder for each subject area, and then a resources folder within that subject area for any additional resources that we'll give the students.
Awesome. And keep in mind, for all of you guys, this is first and foremost, this is about you. We're going to be a little bit selfish at the start of this, because it's like the organization is teacher organization first and foremost. So whether or not it's things that go to the kids or just things for you guys, this is great, because you can then decide what from here gets given to the kids, or what from here informs how you build a seesaw activity or something like that. So this is great. This is awesome. And then that way you guys can just compile things, and you guys may have 10 items in there and you decide you're only going to do 4 of them with the kids. That's fine. But at least you then always have access to that stockpile of stuff.
That was great, Nicole. Thanks for sharing that. It's helpful to see.
Sure.
Wondering how to make the Google form I created live in the Google form folder.
So there is no Google form folder.
I created a Google form folder, like after.
Yeah, you can create. Yeah, there's no like default form folder. You just create one called forms or surveys or exit tickets or whatever you want, and then you would put them in there. Now, this brings up a good point. I will show you something. So like for me, what I did for this class was I just went into my my folder for this class, which is 5482, and I just made the form in here. So that's how this form is in this folder. Now, if I wanted to have a collection of exit tickets or something, or quizzes, maybe I have a folder of quizzes, you can then go into that folder first and make all your stuff in there. One sort of caveat to this, and it's not really a caveat, it's more just understanding how things work. Google has done this thing where now, like if you click on this little icon in the top left-hand corner, and this goes for Drive, Docs, Sheets, whatever, it takes you to this, which is like the Forms homepage, where it shows you just your Google Forms. Docs is the same way. Like if you clicked on this, you would go to Slides. I really, really, really hate this because teachers will come here and go, oh, I'm going to make a new one. Problem is it doesn't organize them. This is just the app. There's zero organization here. So I always tell people, don't ever come to these things. So that's why, Ellie, when you first said the Forms folder, I was like, no, wait, no. Because I thought you were referring to this mess.
That's where I was. Thank you.
Yeah, no. Don't come here. So what you do is when you want to make something, you go into the folder. Then you go new and whatever. That way, whatever it is that you make, it will make it inside of your organization. These things are just, it's technically it's organization, but it's organized by file type. It's not actual sort of cross file type organization. So don't use those sections. You want to, don't make a blank presentation from here or a blank form from here. Always go into the folder that you want it to live, be in the folder, then make the new thing. That will keep everything contained in the proper place, and you won't have random, because if you come here and do it, it's just going to live randomly in my drive. It's not going to be anywhere, and then you got to move it. So a lot of times people will say, well, but it's so much easier to click there and click this. And it's like, you think it's easier, but then on the back end, you got to do the same number of clicks to put it in the right place. So it's the same amount of work. It's just, do you want to do it on the front end and be clean, or do you want to have to figure out where stuff is and fix it on the back end? I'm a big fan of doing the stuff up front, which is why you go into your folder in Drive. You do everything based out of My Drive. You go down your level of folders. Then when you're here, then you do new, and then that's how you keep things organized. Does that make sense, Ellie? Yeah, that's a common quirk. When Google released that, I was like, oh my God, you're just gonna make my life harder. Now I gotta tell people how to solve problems Google created.
So Chris, I have a question, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
So to piggyback on what you just said, so we should go in, so I created a Google Forms folder, click on the Google Forms folder, and then how do I click on to the forms through that? I missed that.
So go to share your screen and we'll take a look.
Sure. Okay.
And this is what this class is about, just getting you guys comfortable with the nuances.
Yeah. No, sorry.
It's fine.
Okay. Okay, so I'm here and I created
Cool.
this Google Forms, but I have nothing in there.
So go to new. No, left-hand
Go
side.
to new here. Oh, okay. So do it through there. So
New, more.
and then do it through here. Okay.
And then Google Forms.
Okay.
And what that'll do is
Forms
that'll
right here.
create your new form inside of that folder.
Inside that folder.
Another folder.
Oh.
And then
Okay.
that's how everything becomes organized.
Because I've created Google Forms, but I couldn't find them because I was creating them in the other way.
Forms, and they were just in the bottom of your drive. Now, here's something. Let's stay on you for a second, if you don't
So
mind.
if I wanted to do this, no, go ahead. So if I wanted to do getting to know you.
Right.
Okay.
So
Go ahead.
So now what you want to do is right now you notice, and this is a quirk of Google, in the top left, it still says untitled form, but you've given it a title. So all you have to do is just click where it says untitled form, and it'll populate whatever you wrote in the title. Just click there.
Okay.
Now you want to make sure that happens, because if you don't do that, it'll stay as untitled form, and then you'll have all these untitled forms. You'll be like, I don't know what this is.
Gotcha.
Now,
And so do we want, so because I'm creating this form, let me just set the logo. Should I put the student's name first? Because then when I go to the spreadsheet, I want to know who the who's answering my question, or does it automatically do that?
it does not automatically do it. The only thing it will automatically do is your timestamp, and that's when the form was filled out. If you right now go up to the gear,
To the what? I'm sorry.
The gear next to the send button. You might have to move our heads out of the way.
Here?
To the left, the little cog.
Oh, here.
Settings.
Okay.
If you go to that and click it, and if you were to do collect email addresses right now, then and save it, then the second column would be their email addresses. And then the third column would be the first question you ask them.
Okay.
Now, if you're teaching first grade, you may say, you know what, since we're all logged into Google, maybe I don't even ask them what their first name is because that's just more that they have to type. Or maybe collecting email addresses is enough because then you can see who did it. You don't have to play around with this. Now, keeping in mind that you as a 100% virtual first grade teacher, there's going to be a learning curve on this. Because as we all know, at the start of first grade, they're basically kindergartners, right? Like
can't read.
Right?
There's
that basic sort of startup, as with any grade, right? Like fifth graders are really old fourth graders. So there's that learning curve, and you got to sort of say like, all right, like you may build this and you may have this ready for like September 21st. And you're like, let me see how well my kids do, because you're also not there with them. So you can't physically walk them through this. So you might have to say like, all right, let's give this a shot. Maybe what you do for the first one is you have one question and it's like, yes or no. And then the purpose of the form is to see if they can access the form, see if they know how to click the link in Seesaw. Does the form open up right? Do they see the question? Can they click submit? So maybe your initial form in kindergarten or first grade is literally like one question of like, click the button.
Right.
And then it's just about, which is fine. And I mean, that could even be like a second grade thing, right? Because second graders are essentially really old first grade. So the form, and stay here for a quick second, I'll show you a trick. What you can do for this one is type, click the cat. Just write the words, click the cat.
Oh, right. Click the, okay. There's a lawnmower next door to me, and so I'm having trouble.
I got you.
I'm outside. Sorry. The cat, is that what you said?
Cat. Yeah, C-A-T.
Okay.
Now, what you can do is go to option 1.
Okay.
And then you see on the right-hand side, there's that little picture icon. Click it. And not C-A-P, C-A-T, like the cat. So then go to Google Image.
Okay. And so now.
No, just it's fine. Go to Google Image Search. We'll fix that in a second. Go to Google Image Search.
Oh my God, I can't hear anything, Chris. I'm sorry.
It's okay. To the right.
Go to Google
Image Search. To your right.
I'm going to have to move.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's okay. So while she's doing that, what I'll say is what you can do with these, and this works for anything, is you can.
Okay, can hear better now.
Okay, so go to Google Image Search.
Okay.
And then just search for CAT. Just click the first one. And then click the insert button. And then what that's going to do is it's loading the image.
Put it here.
It's going to be right there.
Oh, wow.
And that's going to be it. So if you wanted to, what you can do now is up at the top, see the little eyeball next to the gear? Yep. That's your preview. That's just going to let you see. So click that. You're going to see what it looks like. So you can literally, for kindergarten, first grade, second grade, have a single question. Click the cat. Boom. Click it. Submit. Then that way they just, you would edit. So in the bottom right-hand corner, you see the pencil. You can go back to your edit view.
Okay, fix that.
And you can leave. Leave. It's just because you clicked on the answer. So you would edit it. But like,
and then how do I edit the?
Just click on it.
Okay.
Yep. So K12, you guys can make a form to see what their skill level is, that's almost like an informal assessment for yourself of how adept are these kids at navigating Seesaw, at navigating links, at whatever. And you can then decide, all right, the first one, I'm not going to collect their, information. Because again, Lorella, if you go up to the gear, the settings gear in the top right.
Here?
Yep. And if you go there, you can see how there's the restrict to Scarsdale users. And Nicole, this could be to your point too, is like you may, for the first one, want to uncheck restrict to users, essentially make it a totally public forum. Like, let's go down the troubleshooting pathway, right? Path of least resistance. For the first one, you're just trying to see if they can get in. So you have no settings on it. And your option is like literally click the cat. Can they go to Seesaw? Can they click the link? Can they fill out? Can they choose the option? Can they click submit? Awesome. They did that. Okay, tomorrow we're going to do it again with a slightly different one, maybe 2 questions. And this one, we're going to turn on email and we're going to restrict it to Scarsdale and let's see, you know, and then that's how you can like build capacity for them. And that's also too, from a teacher standpoint, you can kind of get a sense of their skill and ability and comfort with the technology, where the different deficits might be. You know, is it a deficit in logging into Seesaw, or can they get all the way into the activity, but then there's a disconnect and they get thrown off when the new app opens? Okay, so like we got to talk about how, you know, it's totally fine that a new app opens. You know, you can kind of see where your fail points are in that flow, in that workflow, which especially for the virtual only teachers is going to be so important to like slow roll this stuff, because like you can't sit there on the rug sort of wrapped around everybody going, all right, yeah, click this, click this, click this. You got to kind of go literally one step at a time. And it doesn't, and I've used this a bunch in other classes, and I'll probably start saying it a lot more now, like it's not about the elegant solution. It's just about the one that works. So this may not be the best, this may not be the most engaging, but you know what, for the first one, it gets the job done. And then second one, add more questions. Third one, make it more difficult, and then build up and build capacity. And then related, just in terms of all these different things, I'm gonna stop the sharing for a second, is there's nothing wrong with using the thing that works. Like, if you find your kids can get into forums and fill them out, then make a bunch of them. Just make them different every time. Because then if you know that they can use it and you know that that's an easy place to get feedback, to do a quiz, something, it's simple, it's clean, it's easy. It does not have to be the flashiest, most Pinteresty, Instagram-y app or whatever. Who cares about that? Does it get the job done? Can the kids access it easily? And does it function? Like, does it give you what you need on the back end? Like, that's where we are, like September to January. You know what I mean? Like, let's make sure all this stuff is working before we start getting all rainbows, unicorns, and fireworks and stuff. You know what I mean? Cool. Questions, other questions?
And so I just looked at my drive, it automatically saved into that form.
Automatically.
And then I can
saved
just
right
go back and revise it or add another one.
Exactly.
Great, thank you.
Exactly. And that's the thing. That's the organization. Like, start at that Google Drive folder. Everything you do, you go to that Google Drive folder first. Go to the right folder within that. Make your new things and keep that tiered structure going. Anyone else want to share their organization?
I could.
Yeah, go ahead and share your screen.
Okay. Okay, so what I did was, like you said, I made, well, this is in actually I went to my drive, I made, for this school year, I made a folder.
Mm-hmm.
And doing this activity for the past 45 minutes, I realized how disorganized my drive is. I've got stuff old, new. What annoys me is that like stuff will come up from years ago here, and sometimes I just want to look for more recent stuff. And when I clicked over here, it says last modified, but that doesn't necessarily give me, I mean, this is a side question, but if we could search for like a date period. So I made the folder, and then the subfolders I made was Schoology lessons. You know, sometimes we get important work documents, especially from human resources, and we don't need them now necessarily, but in 6 months, especially if it's like healthcare related. So I made a folder for that, like important stuff that's shared. Then there's important stuff that's shared just for the middle school that only, you know, we need to know and I need to document for the future. special ed documents. And just as I was doing this, I got a document from one of the secretaries and I put it in here, and there it is.
Awesome.
So that's going to help me. And these change year to year, not only year to year, but they change, month to month. We get updates.
Yeah.
So, in a couple of weeks, I can get another one where it's updated, so I could change that. This is loose. I have to figure out, but this is good. This is starting me off this year. And then this one is my lessons from just the beginning of what I did last spring, trying to organize these, and I do them by the unit. So I don't organize by week. I do by unit. Sometimes based on their technology, what they have or they don't have, art materials that they may or may not have. I have to move these things around.
Right. And that's the thing, is like, for you right now, it doesn't matter about them, in the sense that this is your organization and how can you find those resources. So in a minute, we'll start talking about, then moving around to them and about how we can start sort of changing that dynamic. But that's awesome. One thing you brought up, and I'll share my screen, is about searching for things and how the modified stuff works. So when you're looking at something, it's last modified. Now, the reason why other things might show up recently is because if you have a folder with a bunch of shared stuff in it, that folder may have been made 2 years ago, but there's something in that folder that somebody made 2 years ago, but is updating constantly. And then they're updating that. Since it's in your folder, it's letting you know that there was something updated. So like, these have all updated like specific times. But if I come out here, it just says the day. Right? So if this could be from 2 years ago, but if there's something in there that I update now, it's going to say that that folder was updated recently because it was something within it was updated. Does that make sense? As to why your old folders have newer dates on them?
Yes. And I think what you mentioned before about moving things from shared with me into my own personal folder that I make, that helps that problem now. Because now I kind of like moved it. It's my thing. I could just, the whole thing is you need to be able to find it when you need it. And that's the bottom line. Now, and I find the drive, before talking to you, the drive was like a hole that I just threw things into, and you can't, it's in there somewhere. And even when I would type the name in, it wouldn't come up.
Right. And that's the thing, is like, I always use like the basement analogy, right? Like, you can fling all your stuff in the basement, but then your basement is a mess of stuff. You can't find anything. But if you put it in nice little Tupperware bins on nice little baker's racks or whatever, then suddenly you're like, oh, I know my Christmas decorations are here, or I know my whatever, because you've organized it. So it's that same sort of notion of like, yeah, you could pitch everything into the basement, but then you're going to be wading through knee-deep tinsel for the rest of your life, But you can, up here, when you go to search drive, there's this little drop down. You can actually search for more specific details. So you can search by file type. So if you happen to know that it's a document, you can search by owner. So not owned by me or a specific person, if you know somebody sent something, right? So I don't know, let's see if Nicole sent me something, and then it could be anywhere, meaning doesn't have to be, I could even search trash. I could search starred, it could be in shared with me, doesn't matter. Date modified. Could be anytime. I could put in keywords and stuff, and then I can search and I can see if anywhere in here, including my trash. So apparently Nicole has not shared anything with me as a doc. Not that she hasn't shared anything with me, but she has not shared a doc. I guess it's probably because I share with everybody else and it goes the other direction. But you can customize.
I shared our Google site. I share.
Site. Right. You do share, but see documents, but see that's different.
Right.
If I went to sites, then I would probably see the one site that shows up, but probably not, but don't worry about it. But that's like, this is specific. It could be any, and let's see if there's something different, or she just doesn't share anything with me. It's okay. We'll do that. We'll do this specific person. We'll do Jerry, because I know that Jerry Creasy has shared stuff with me. And so anywhere I can do a search, and then I just see things that are shared by him. If I wanted to narrow it down, I can go to just presentations by him. And then now I've narrowed it down. So instead of 6 years of him sharing stuff, I'm just looking at just the spreadsheets that he shared with me. So that's a way to help you organize that stuff too, is because then you can like, oh yeah, here's that one I needed. Oh, the test slideshow. Yeah, now I need to drag that to my folder, and I can open this up, and I can drag this over. So using that sort of advanced search tool is helpful. Cool. Now, one thing I will say too, because I know some people use Google Classroom, is that Google Classroom creates its own folder, which is over here, with a folder for each class that you're attached to. You can make that one form, and then you just add it to those other places. You don't have to make, if this form is the same, and if you want to collect the data in the same place, you could basically just put the link in the Google Classroom. You don't even need to put it in the folder, just put the link in Google Classroom, much like K1 and 2 would put it into Seesaw, because it's just about the file. Now, that said, if you have multiple classes and you all give them the one form, now for elementary, it's different because you only have like your 20 some odd kids, so fine. But like middle school, high school, if you were doing one form for multiple sections, you potentially could have 100 responses. You may want to have it be broken down by section, by grade, by whatever. So what you could actually do in those situations is, I don't think you can do it from here, is you make a copy. Yeah, you just make a copy. Like once the form is done once, make a copy and call it period 2, period 3, section 4, whatever you want to do. So that way you can have the same form, just with a different title, if you don't want to have so many kids filling it out all at once. Mostly elementary people in this class. So in that case, you really only need even if you're using Google Classroom, you still make it whatever you want to make it. You just then put the link. When you do send, you would just put the link into the Google Classroom for them to actually access. Cool. All right, so now going through sort of what we've been talking about, we're going to kind of we're going to kind of skip over, in a sense, the student side of this, because in essence, it's the same. So the way you guys have organized this, and the way I sort of told you guys to organize this, would be a way that you would tell your own students. Now at the elementary level, we have Hapara, which is forced organization, because they get their reading, writing, math, science, social studies folders. So you just tell them, go into your science folder and make a new document, go into your social studies folder. So the premise holds. And now that you have, some understanding of this and some practice now going through this, you're going to sort of impart that same sort of wisdom to your students. Now, first grade, K1, 2, we'll do a little bit more tomorrow when we actually talk Seesaw, about how you use folders in Seesaw to help keep the kids a little bit more organized within the Seesaw environment. Before now, second grade, like we're going to get to Google stuff. We'll see when, depending on how the year goes and whatnot. But Seesaw also has those folders for organization. Cool. All right. So now what I want to do is I want to look at, and I want to make sure, because I have my own idea of what I want to have you do for the next hour or so. But let's take a quick look at your questions. Yeah, we're going to get to more of this a little bit later about creating activities. So now we're going to go through this, and it's going to come up and down and in and out throughout. Most effective and most engaging are, I think, tricky words, because a form may not be the most engaging platform, but it may be the most effective for the purpose, right? It's bland, it's simple, but it gets the job done. Super engaging platforms may not have a lot of substance. The kids may love to click around on things, but there may not be a lot there. Like I know at the elementary level, one of the things we use is reflex math. Kids love reflex math, but it's basically got what, like two skills essentially, right? Like it's not a super deep, robust math app. Super engaging, but a little bit limited.
It's purely math facts. I mean, that's yeah, it doesn't go deep.
It doesn't go deep. Kids love it because it's got little guys and pinwheels and little characters, but it doesn't go deep. So IXL is much deeper. it may not be as sort of engaging from the standpoint of it's a video game type vibe. So we have to be thoughtful about, in this hybrid or all virtual scenario, it's not about necessarily the elegant solution. It's about the one that works. And sometimes simple is best. Google Form may not be the most engaging platform, couple of questions, and that's why you scale capacity, even for older kids. Don't give them a 10-question form right at the start. Give them a 3-question, and then build that capacity as you go. We will get to do Zoom stuff in a little bit. Probably tomorrow we'll do. So this is going to kind of go along with some of the other stuff we're going to do. Because elementary school, technically, we're not really doing asynchronous stuff because we're just doing in-person within the independent work. People at the elementary level have been using asynchronous homework and independent work somewhat interchangeably, which has been raising some confusion. And we're going to sort of talk about how you can create things for students to do alone. I'll put it to you like that. I don't want people to think that we're doing sort of the same level of asynchronous video production work that we did last year. That was a little bit different. And this kind of goes with the other one. So the formative assessment is a little bit like what we talked about with forums, where you can actually have a little bit of, that you give them the questions, you get the answers. And since the responses, you can do the responses by individual. So if you went through and you collected email addresses and you collected names, you could look at the individual responses per child. And then that's where you could be a little bit more direct with your feedback, because you could then look at the results and you can have the one-on-one conversation with them or the office hours with them and say, hey, listen, I saw when you did that form, when you did that quiz, that you got these 3 types of questions incorrect. Let's talk about it. Or I see based on what you wrote in that form. So that's where forms can be flexible. It's not the snazziest one, but you definitely could bend it to your will a little bit.
Chris?
Yeah.
And just a question about a capability for Google Forms. Could you ever import like a screenshot from like Singapore math?
Totally.
Okay.
So when you come, just like we did with Lorella earlier, you could come over here, and if, let's say this was going to be a multiple choice, you can, for option 1, when you click on this, you can actually upload. So if you have a screenshot on your desktop, you could browse and upload it. And that's as a choice question. You could even, if you wanted to, you can make, you can make the question an image. So like there's just an image as the question. And then the answer could be like, based on this image, which is the correct answer. And you based on this image, and it's multiplication question. It's like, is this question an add, subtract, multiply, divide? So yeah, you can add pictures to questions. You could add, see like right there, you actually can put it here. And let's say I did name. So this is part of the question with then answers. You could add pictures to the answers. You can add a picture in between questions. So like this picture is what you refer to for the next 4 questions. So you could have a giant picture, and then the next 4 questions, the kids have to scroll back up and look at that original one. So yeah, you can, tons of flexibility in that regard. And that's the thing, is like push these simple apps to their limits. Like try to get the most out of these because they work, they're easy to use, and they can actually do a lot and give you a lot back. Cool.
Thank you.
No problem. Let me go back down. I want to make sure, responses. So I do want to make sure we're like, everyone knows that I have been looking at these and we're going to touch on these in different ways. And then, some of these are going to be a little bit tough. Now, some of these, in terms of planning time, a lot of that and sort of is going to be your grade level partners, your building, because the principals, I don't know, and they haven't really told us like where faculty meetings come into these things, or where like district grade level meetings, like, every Monday we used to go to the district grade levels. I don't know if that kind of stuff is happening. We still aren't entirely sure if we're allowed to be in the building during like the AM, PM cleaning time, you know, so there's some of that stuff is a little bit up in the air. Hopefully the things we talk about, you then by the end of this will figure out how these can support and help you with the planning. And then, yeah, the schedule is rugged, especially, I mean, like we have the AM, PM. I know middle school has sort of the AB, but some kids are there 4 days, but it's sort of bananas. It's going to be about having access to this stuff, and the organization is sort of the foundation for that. Because once you're organized and you know where things are, you can more easily push them out to people at the drop of a hat, or you can more easily plan around things you have in those folders and stuff. Again, the kids engaged, this is going to just be tough. And I kind of want to be, you know, like, it's going to be tough because no matter what the app is, or no matter what the assignment is, we're dealing with this new dynamic of they're no longer like the captive audience. You know, we would have them in our rooms and we could talk to them and we could redirect them and we can get their attention again. And we could do these things to kind of like guide them. And now they're at home, and Netflix and Amazon in the backyard and the driveway and the basketball hoop. And there's all these other things that we're kind of competing for attention with, plus siblings in the house, you know, and like the siblings need help or the parents are helping multiple kids. So I think what we have to do is rethink sort of the level at which we give things to them, as well as be honest with them about like, listen, this may not be the most engaging or interesting thing, but get through it, and then we'll see how everyone gets through it, and then we'll build every time. You know, not every lesson is going to be engaging and great. We have to start with these really simple baselines and kind of build on them to see what the capacity is, because we've never done AB, we've never done AM, PM, we've never done all virtual. I mean, we did last year, but we were forced into that. So like, you know, we got to sort of see and be flexible and be able to move. And then, yeah, we're going to do a bunch of Zoom stuff later with like breakout rooms and structuring your lessons and stuff like that. Cool. Yeah. And what we're going to do actually now is we're going to do a little bit of Google Slide stuff, because Google Slides is super flexible, because it's stuff you can create. It's stuff that can go to Google Classroom. It can go to Seesaw. It can go on a Google site. Your kids then can make the Google slideshow. You know, your kids can make flip books. Like there's all these different things. So what we'll do is, and then we'll sort of address like people's like second burning questions after that. So what we'll do is I'm going to get myself organized over here real fast. Any questions before I go on? Anything that I did not, any lingering issues from Drive or Forms? Awesome. All right, so let me get into my folder. Okay, so what we're going to do is this, and I realize, and I'll preface this by saying I realize that there is going to be a bit of ironic hypocrisy in what I'm about to show you, tell you, and make you do, but I fully understand and I'm aware of the ironic hypocrisy. So that is what we're going to do. Is we are going to, now I'm in my folder, right? I'm in this classes folder, which is in this, you know, subject area. So I'm going to make my new thing, and I'm going to make my new, oops, not my new folder, my new slideshow. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this, and we're going to call this eLearning Open House. So this is going to be ostensibly your open house presentation. The thing that you're going to give virtually to the parents. However, I am going to give you the same limitation I give my students, which I understand is, or which I'll tell you is the ironic hypocrisy. 6 words, 1 image. Now I say that because if you look through my presentation, I certainly have more than 6 words on here. The idea being is that this is so that you don't need me here. I want you to try to create a 5-slide presentation that you would use to support visually what you are saying during your open house thing. The reason why I'm pointed on that and saying in that specific way is, and the difference between, like, let's say this presentation I did is, this is on the website that will theoretically, you could then refer to this afterwards. You can refer to this, like, this is for, like, you don't need me for this. For your open house, even though we're not in person and we're virtual, you're still talking and you're still present. Now, this could be your one-on-one. Maybe you make like a simple 5-slide presentation that, like, the elementary teachers will show each parent during the one-on-one sessions. Could be used for the, just if we do like a big webinar. I don't truly honestly know what's happening in terms of those open house type things. But try to keep it to be 6 words on a slide or 1 image. Because what you can do with that is you can say, all right, I'm going to insert, and this is going to go to something else too that we're going to get to, like an image. And you may say, all right, what am I going to do? I'm going to do seesaw. It's not there. Oh, but look, if I scroll down, maybe I do seesaw app. Oh, look at that. Now I have more seesaw stuff, right? So you can change these things up. And what you might do, and if you can't find something here, it's because these are all the royalty-free ones. You can do seesaw app. Click it so you get the good one, then control click, copy image, and paste it. Should be, there it goes. Now, I have this slide, I have this image. I'm gonna drag it out. So like now I'm using this border. So now it's, it's nice, it's lined up. I'm using my red lines to make it look good, make it look clean. I'll put a little border around it just so it kind of looks nice. So that way when I would present it, it would look like this. Now the reason why I'm having you guys do this is, if you're on Zoom with people, you want them to focus on the one most important thing and have them connect it visually to what they're hearing you say. So how will you make a simple, clean presentation that most pointedly gets your intention and ideas and point across with the simplest amount of stuff on the page? Now, like the kids always say, well, what if I want to do 2 pictures, compare, contrast? It's like, sure, you can do that. The idea is not to have it super cluttered. And maybe you can do 6 words and 1 image, but the idea is keep it simple and clean. How are you going to, in this virtual world, own this little window to convey the information to parents? You can use anything you want. You can use colors, you can use shapes, you can use whatever. And we'll share this out in a little bit, and then I'll show you guys tricks and technical funkiness. Because then as you're creating this, think about too then, as you're building this and you're thinking about how am I going to make this simple and clean and clear, the flip side of that is, how can I make the kids make something that conveys the message simple and clean and clear? Now, granted, I know that K1 is going to be a little bit different, and 2 even with the iPad and stuff, but we'll sort of, when we get more into Seesaw, we'll talk about that. But this is just about looking and thinking about this box, how we're all stuck in this little Zoom window. So how can we make, and this goes to that engaging element. This may seem simple and clean, but if I'm saying Seesaw is your entry point, you're always going to look for this app because this is going to be where all your stuff is. That's it. Then they are always going to connect this visual to what I just said. They're always going to have it be like, oh, that's the app where all my stuff is. Oh, that's the icon where all my stuff is. Because when you take away all the clutter of a lot of the text and you simplify it to 1 or 2 images, like just a couple of words with an image, you're really drawing that audience's eye to it. And that's where that engagement is going to come from, is getting rid of the noise and simplifying it to the most basic visual elements. Cool. So for the next hour, so we'll say 1 o'clock. Actually, no, you know what we're going to do? Let me see. we'll amp it up even a little bit because I think you guys can do it. I want to make sure you guys get all this stuff in. What I want you to do is this. We're going to say the next 2 hours. So you have 2 hours because that way you can have some lunch and, take a break. So at 2 o'clock, we'll come back. In that time, and I'll keep this open. I'll be bouncing around, like coming in and out, but I'll have the call open. You can hang up if you want. Make your presentation simple and clean, thinking about what you're going to say that's not going to appear on the screen, but what are you going to say that's going to reinforce the point of that visual? Then, when you're done with that and you think you have it, where are you going to put it? Try to figure out what you're going to use. K12, see if you can put it into Seesaw. The people like my Heath Code folks using Google Sites, toss it on your Google site. We won't publish it, but toss it on your Google site. See if there's anything that needs to go around it. If you're somebody who's setting up Google Classrooms or Schoology, how do you put that into Schoology if you want that to be accessible, right? Try to get it from soup to nuts, right? From idea to complete publishable in the next 2 hours. Cool? Any questions? Awesome. Go forth. I will see you at 2.
Chris, do we need to?
All right. So welcome back. What I'm going to do is in relation to themes for Google Slides, not even Google Slides, you can actually even use this for PowerPoint as too, some of them for Keynote, but Keynote has a lot better built-in themes. So I'm going to show, this is Slides Mania. Slides Mania has a bunch of different, there's education ones, notebook styles, weekly planners, but they also have just generic sort of themes with different colors, different layouts and stuff like that. And what you do is you just find, you click on one, and if you like it, you kind of sort of flip through and you get a sense of what the different slides look like, the different colors. You can actually go through and play the little YouTube videos about it so you see what it looks like. And then just be careful, it's not this download button. You come down here, see this is an actual Google slide. You can get the Google Slides theme by clicking that button or that one. Same thing with Slides Carnival. And the thing I really like about Slides Carnival is the images you get. So if I look at, I'll take a look at this one and I'll go through it. So same thing, and this is use the Google Slides button. But what you do is if you look at them, so at the end, it actually gives you emojis, it gives you icons that are built into it. So these things are all little objects that come within the presentation. So then you can copy them and paste them to different areas of the slide. They're the graphics that basically come with the theme, really sort of high-end clip art, which is nice because it's good looking, simple, clean imagery. So these are nice. And this is one that's based around monsters. So they give you elements of monsters so you can build your own. So using something like this from Slides Carnival, this is a way where you kind of create that more engaging presentation. So, it's the simple, it's clean, but then you could add simple little elements like this to kind of get the kids' attention or keep the kids' attention, and it's the kind of thing where it gives you this template for the picture, you put the picture in, and then you could add those little monster elements to yourself if you want. So this is one of those laptop clip arts. You have little eyeballs. Simple things like these can go a long way to making it more engaging, to making it more fun for you to create, not just for the kids to use, and things like that. Cool. So that's Slides Mania has a lot of these generic, not generic, they're actually the opposite of generic, but they're very teacher specific. So you can look for, some of these things with the planners and stuff. This is one where the file cabinet drawers open up and stuff like that. They're very sort of virtual classroom style, which are cool. There's nothing wrong with them. If that's sort of the look you're going for. I tend to like to make my own presentations, but I'll use Slides Carnival because I like the simple clean, you know, if I'm doing a presentation, I might get something that's kind of simple, and like even if I would do this, because it's mostly simple, it's clean, it's easy to read, and then I know that when I go to the end, I'm going to have access to different icons for infographics. I'm going to have access to these different clip art icons and stuff like that. But then I'm also going to have extra resources related specifically to that theme that I've chosen, and that will help sort of, you know, up the engagement ante, so to speak.
Chris,
Cool.
when you click on use as Google slideshow, does it automatically put it into your Google account so you could use it again and again?
So it opens up like this. And since I'm logged into Chrome, I'm logged into my Google account, I just go use template. And takes a second. And then there it is. Now this is a Google slideshow that I can now edit. What I've done personally, and this goes to things that we've done in this class already, is then what I'll do is I'll actually take and I'll go to this folder right here, this little move, because right now this is just dumped into my drive, right? It's the random messy file. I'll go to move. And what I'll do is I actually have in here, and I might have to, I can't search for it. I have a templates folder. I don't remember where that is. I think it's under templates. I'm going to put it somewhere else. No, I think it might be under tech. No, let me figure out where it is. I haven't done it in a while, but so I have a folder called slide templates in my drive. So then I would come over here, and when I do this, I just go down to S. There it is. And here's some other ones that I've taken. So I would move it there. And then what I would do personally is, now that I've put that in there clean, what I would then do is I would then make a copy of this. So then that way I have my now theme that I've put in, but now I'm going to make a copy of it, and I'm not going to put this in here. I'm going to say, you know, STI eLearning demo. So I've opened it up from Slides Carnival. I've saved the template in my Slides template folder, so I'm organized with my original template. Then I made a copy of it, and now I'm coming down to my PD folder, and I'm like, all right, let me put this over here. And I know that these are a bunch of steps, right? These are steps in the process, but these steps are important because once you do them up front, you now know where everything is. So a little bit of this organization up front will make life easier on the back end. You know, you go through that time of making sure your templates are saved clean in like a template folder. You make a copy, so you bring it into like your, you know, your math folder, your curriculum folder, whatever it is. Now then you could start going through and changing it and making it your own. And then that way, if you delete something by accident, no big deal. You just come back here and this is your clean template. And what you can do is you can just like copy this, you know, you need this, you copy it, bring it over here, paste. And now you have two. See? And this means you can link to it, which means if I link it, anything I change on the original will change on this slide as well. And I can say do not link. Cool. Now, we're not going to spend a ton of time sharing what you made currently. We're going to sort of save that, because what we're going to do is we're going to build upon that. So you guys made this slideshows for the last, you know, hour and a half, 2 hours, thinking about being simple and clean, and thinking about, you know, talking through stuff, right? Thinking about making it for like an open house situation where you're giving the core visual so that your voice can really give the detail and really support it. So that's basic, right? That's basic sort of synchronous. It's almost like live teaching, because even if it's not a Zoom, that's what you can do with the kids, right? You could be in front of your cohort of children with on your screen the couple of simple images so that they're seeing a simple, clean visual, and they're really listening to you, and they're connecting what you're saying to that visual. how can we make that easily asynchronous? So you can easily make it asynchronous by using Screencastify, which is built in to Chrome extension. So what you can do with Screencastify is you have your presentation, you're like, oh, I know exactly what I'm going to say in front of my kids, or I've done this in front of my students 100 times. I want to make it so that they can see it again. It's the same presentation. It's the same content. It's the same work you've already done. Then you can just literally hit the Screencastify button and you record the browser tab if you want to just record this. You could even record the desktop and then go full screen. And then what you can do is you can click record. It's going to give you a countdown, and or actually does this, you got to say record the entire screen. I'm going to click share. It's going to give me a countdown, and then I click the present button. Now I just talked through my presentation. So this presentation can exist as a standalone visual that you post somewhere. You can use it in the classroom where it's on the smart board and you're talking to your kids who you are in front of. But then you can use the exact same presentation and something like Screencastify to just talk over it while you advance the slides. And then all of a sudden, you now have an asynchronous lesson. And I'm just going to get out of this. And it takes a second. I just stop the recording. And now this is my video. And if you turn this on, you can use it in the classroom where it's on the smart board and you're talking to your kids who you are in front of. But then you can, right? So now I've just created essentially an asynchronous lesson, and I can share it to Drive. I can get a shareable link out of Drive. I can publish it to YouTube, right? So I can do anything I want with this. So we took a simple idea of a 5 to 10 slide presentation, simple, clean, basic information, simple text, simple images, but you speaking and teaching over it. And now you've been able to repurpose that one piece of material. You do it live with the kids. You can post just the slideshow to your website or your teacher page so kids can refer to the slideshow if they want to. Or you can then now use Screencastify to record it. So then you've now basically done something once, and you've now turned it into 3 different variations of itself. And then with this, I get the shareable link. I can copy this. And if I wanted to, I could move the little zoom heads around. I could toss this in the chat. And boop. And whoops, everyone. And then theoretically, everyone can then watch it. Now, I don't like personally doing things via Drive. I prefer to put them on YouTube because I think YouTube is the best thing. Like we talked about this earlier, like use the right tools for the job. You want to communicate, use Gmail. You want to schedule, use Calendar. You want to organize files, use Drive. You want to host video content, post it on YouTube, because that's what YouTube does. YouTube is a video host. And right from here, I can just click publish to YouTube, and then it is going to walk me through. I can make it public. I can call it, whoops, STI eLearning screencast demo. And I can click upload. And it's going to upload it to YouTube. Then I can take that YouTube link and I can put that anywhere. I can email it to kids. I could put it in a slide presentation. I can put it on my teacher page, a Google site, Google Classroom. I could put it in Seesaw. You can put that anywhere. And what's cool is once it's on YouTube, so if I come over here and I go to YouTube, and I go to, oops, I'm gonna go to my channel, and might take a second to get up there. This is what happens when you run Zoom and Screencastify and all these things somewhat simultaneously. But in essence, it would show up, and I've done this before. You can see I've got a bunch of these demos. So let's say, it'll take a minute, but let's say this is it, right? And it's going to start recording, right? So it's giving you a counter, and if you look on this, so then let's say I copied that, I can then come back over to a presentation, and I can insert a video. And then I can put that video right back into another presentation. And it's right there. So we've taken the simple idea, and it's not super fancy. You know, if we look at this, there's not a lot of pizzazz to it. There's no soundtrack. It's not perfect. Sort of get rid of the idea of perfect and just get it done. It's a slideshow that I can use for different things. I can talk to it as in person. I could use it as like on a Zoom. I could share the screen, or I can simply talk over it. And then I post it to YouTube, and not only can then kids go and refer to it, they can refer back to it later for homework. It can be an asynchronous lesson, because if you've recorded your voice to it, you're essentially walking them through it. So not only is it review, it can be asynchronous if you haven't done it in person yet. So it fits all those needs all in one spot. And by making it a video and putting it on YouTube, you know it's eminently accessible, right? Because you can get YouTube on your iPhone, your iPad, your Chromebook, everything. And you don't have to worry about sharing settings and who did I share it with and what folder is it in and all that stuff. You put it on YouTube, it makes it more accessible. Cool. Now somebody asked about Screencastify, and Screencastify is, it's an extension, and I know elementary has it. I'm just looking through. Screencastify is not in Drive. Screencastify is, I'll share my screen again and show you where we get it. I know at the elementary school, we have it for everybody, including kids. I think middle school might have it, but essentially it lives up here above your bookmark bar. There's this little arrow. But if you don't have that, what you can do is you can go to the Chrome Web Store. And the Chrome Web Store will show you a Scarsdale Schools store, which is essentially, these are all the things that we have approved and are accessible. So these are the things that have been vetted, their privacy policies have been signed, and we know that these are good, and then you could install Screencastify. So again, that's a way where you can leverage the one piece of content that you've created and use it in different ways. And we'll talk some more about it tomorrow, but give up the notion of perfection if you're making asynchronous things or if you're creating videos like this. Because you guys probably saw, and this is why I'm sort of waiting till tomorrow to kind of share everything, because I want you guys to see when you start thinking about these different elements, they're fairly easy to do, but they do take time. You know, they do take an hour for a finished minute, meaning by the time you come up with the idea, think about what you're going to say, build your visual, do it, screw up, do it again, screw up, do it again, get it done, published. Like, oh my God, it took me an hour, and it's like a 1 minute video, which could be fine because then you have it and you can keep it forever. But videos should be short and to the point, 3 minutes. So that way, and then if you get good at them, you can bang them out in half an hour for 3 minutes or less. Like there are times now when I've done so many of these that like I could potentially spend half an hour and I can get a 3 minute video done, start to finish, and have it look halfway decent using something like Screencastify, and then it's finished. So that's a way, again, to leverage your in-person, in classroom, in front of students content, both in that environment, but also on a Zoom or recorded as an asynchronous lesson. Cool. Now, elementary kids, 2nd through 5th have that, or 3rd through 5th. I mean, 2nd graders using Chrome or iPads, but 2nd graders or 3rd, 4th, 5th students have that as well, so they can do that. In terms of your iPad users, you have that built in, and I'll show you how you do that built in. So what I'm going to do is I'll share my screen and I'll show you my iPad.
Can I just ask, Chris, has there been any kind of directive for elementary teachers? Because I know not for middle school yet, as to how long our asynchronous lessons have to be for those kids that are at home?
So technically, we don't have asynchronous lessons because none of our kids.
Yeah, we don't know the answer to that, and that's kind of like, you know, people have been starting to ask that, so I'm wondering.
I would say 3 to 5 minutes.
Really? Yeah.
Because after that, you tune out.
Yeah.
So if you have to chunk it up where you say, you know, hey, listen, here's how you do 2 + 2.
Yeah.
Right. And you do it. And maybe that's 45 seconds. Then you know what? That's fine. Because then if it's 45 seconds and a student can watch it and review it and look at it quickly, they'll take it in more.
Right.
You get past like 5 minutes and kids start to tune out and they're just like, whatever. Just think about even from a mini lesson standpoint, right? A mini lesson is what, 5 to 7 minutes, 10 minutes max, but you're in person and you're turning and talking with each other and you're getting some feedback with the kids. So if you think about your direct instruction in a classroom is probably no more than 10 minutes in a chunk because you're not doing a 60-minute lecture. But out of that like 10-minute chunk, you probably have some student questions or you're asking questions of students to make sure that they get it. You're not having those interactions with them. So now knock it down. 3 to 5 minutes should be max. I would say 3 even, because that's tight enough for them to like watch it, get the main idea and have it be over, go try it. So even if you have a bunch of them, you just break it up. Just break it up into little like 3-minute chunks. And what you can do.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I just want to clarify that because I wanted to make sure everybody does understand that you do not have to create any asynchronous lessons for the kids that are home. That is not expected of you at all.
That's elementary though. We have multiple,
secondary. For elementary school, I just want to clarify for elementary school.
Correct. Yeah, there are secondary teachers on this call. That's why I was saying there's like that caveat because secondary
middle school has to do the asynchronous as well.
Right.
And Chris, if you upload the video to YouTube and then you drop that video into Nearpod, you can add questions.
Mm-hmm.
That could extend the lesson because you could talk for a few minutes and then have a few questions that the kids have to answer.
Totally.
So that might be another tool that you can use if you upload the video to YouTube.
Edpuzzle as well.
It's a great thing.
Edpuzzle too. And Edpuzzle, depending on, so like Edpuzzle, we have a license. I know for elementary, I'm not sure about middle school. I think middle school and high school have Nearpod, but elementary doesn't. There's a few, but yes.
We have Nearpod and Edpuzzle.
Okay. Yeah. And so Edpuzzle definitely does it. And Edpuzzle is a new thing for us at the elementary level. We're going to talk a little bit about tomorrow, but exactly. And that's the thing is like, you can create this simple thing and then have it go into so many different places and be useful in so many different ways. Then you can flip it around and you say to the kids, all right, listen, I just made a 3-minute video. And here's how I did it. I did Google Slides. I wrote myself a little script. I used Screencast to record it. Now, the kids can't post to YouTube, but they can turn it in and Drive. They can share it with you and whatever. You can flip it around and say, all right, now you guys do it. I taught you how to do math. You do a video explaining to me your strategy, or you explain to me based on, you know, the reasons for the start of the American Revolution. What do you think is the most important? You know, you say to the kids, listen, you have no more than 2 minutes. You know, like you have 6 slides, 7 slides. Figure out, tell me, record, make a video of what do you think was the most important factor leading up to the Boston Tea Party. And then what's good about this is you guys make a couple yourselves. When the kids then have questions, you know the tech. You've done a project like this before. You could show it to them. So when they ask you for technical support, you actually have some innate baked in knowledge and experience because you're like, listen, kids, I'm having you do literally what I just did too. And it's the same thing. So that way, even though it's not like the fanciest thing, even though it's not the most polished or elegant or snazzy app, Google Slides and Screencastify, or I'll show you on the iPad how to do it sort of K1, 2, 6, 7, 8 would be like this. So you go into your settings on an iPad and you go to your control center and then customize controls. And when you go to customize controls, you have all these options. The ones with the red at top are ones that are in my control center. The ones with the green are ones that I can add to my control center. So I added screen recording to it. So that means all I have to do is when I pull down, I get the little circle in the bottom corner. You guys see that? It's shaded out now. Reason why it's shaded out is because I've got my iPad connected to my laptop and I'm using QuickTime to mirror my iPad on a Zoom. So there are certain limitations to what you can do. So you can't necessarily do this live, but what I'll do is I'll show you my personal iPad and I'll show you how this works because I can use, now here's what's crazy. I'm going to use my camera on this to show you my personal iPad. And we'll go to, I'm just going to do a search and drive for STI. So here we go. We'll do this one. So it's going to open up now. What you can do is you build a slide in Google Slides. Now, theoretically, you could do this in Keynote too if you wanted to. So for like kindergarten and first grade, you could theoretically use Keynote because that's baked into the iPad and they don't have to sign in or anything to use it. 6, 7, 8, they may be more familiar with it. So then what I do is I just swipe down like from the time, and then I have the little circle right there, right? So that's a screen recording on the iPad. So basically what I would do is I would hit my screen recording button and it's going to start recording. It still gives you that same countdown. And I'm going to go full screen. Takes a second. So now this is getting recorded, but you know what? So what? It's, again, the elegant solution is not what we're doing. We're doing the solution that works. And then I just talk. And as I talk, I advance my slides. And the whole time it's recording. And then this is basically becoming my asynchronous thing. I pull down, I hit stop. And then what it does is it creates in my camera roll. See, it says save to videos. So here, I'll open that up. So here's my video. Now you'll notice because I started recording it, so it's recording it loading, it's recording it presenting. You can trim it if you want to. But then there's this video. You're not hearing it just because I'm muted. Whoops, I just turned my, is what happens when you try to multitask and you need 4 hands and you only have like 1.5. But so this is running and you can see down below, it's got the little timeline, right? So it's showing me that I've recorded this. So this is now a photo in my camera roll, or it's a video in my camera roll of me talking over this presentation. And then if I wanted to edit it, I could bring it into iMovie and I can trim it. Or if I didn't want to edit it, if I just was like, you know what, this is totally cool, I'm just going to click the little up arrow button and I'm just going to share it. And I can share it to people. I can share it to apps. You know, I can share it to Schoology. I can share it wherever I want. So you still have that ability to do a recording on the iPad, and it's literally just talking over content you already have. And it's the simple and easiest way to create something like that if you're in a situation where you need to create something like that. You know, and again, we're dealing with K-12 on this call, so it's not, you know, different people are going to be in different dynamics. You know, and it's a simple way too, like if you're going to be presenting, like some of you are virtual teachers, you're going to be on Zooms all day, right? So you're going to say, all right, we're going to switch to math, and you start going through your math slides, record it. Like record it and then post it and then boom. Or don't even post it, record it and then have it. Because you can always record, because it's better to have and not need than need and not have. And if you're going to be on the call with the kids, sharing your slideshow, talking over it, why not record it? Because then if you need to refer to it, or if you're like, oh my God, that was an amazing lesson, and every kid's like, oh my God, I totally get that, post that on YouTube and be like, hey, listen, this was the lesson where everyone got it. So like refer back to this if you need to. You have those as resources, because if nothing else, these become resources for you. you know? So have them, use them. Thoughts, questions, comments, queries.
I have a quick question, Chris, about
Go for it.
when you're making, if I'm in a, okay, if I have my kids click on a link from my sites or my slides, is there ever a time where I could accidentally give them access to my drive?
Nope.
Okay, that's what someone had said that to me recently, and I just wanted to make sure that I don't understand. I don't know if you do in one document or one show.
It's right. It's physically impossible to give somebody access to your drive without giving them your password.
Okay, that's what I thought.
The only way that you could fake-ish give someone access to your drive is if you had one folder in Drive and you put everything inside of one folder and you made that folder shared or that folder public.
Oh, okay, okay.
That would be the only way, but then you wouldn't have any organization. You'd have everything inside of one folder and it would defeat the purpose of everything we've done here.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, I mean, and that's the thing is like with this, you know, the other thing too is like stuff keeps changing. I mean, let's be honest, right? Like, yes, elementary doesn't have to do asynchronous. We have to do homework or independent work, but it depends on who you talk to. Some people call it asynchronous. Some people call it independent. Some people call it homework. Some people call it assignments. My feeling is I'm showing you guys how to do stuff because then that way, if something changes because things have changed, you net like 2 seconds. It takes 2 seconds to hit that record button twice, and then you're done. And you have it. If you don't want to give it out to anybody, no problem. You have it. It's accessible. But there's also some special ed providers, I believe, on the call who may want to do that and record something just so some students who may be in LRC or maybe getting some reading support or something may need to refer back to that. And maybe that is their extra work, or maybe that is part of their IEP. This is a super easy way to do it without doing a whole lot of extra work. It's the same content you've already created. Record a quick voiceover of it. Don't go more than 3 minutes on the full thing, and don't spend a ton of time polishing it and editing it. Like literally hit record, talk through it, stop the recording, wait for it to process, upload it. Done. Like don't kill yourself like making it the best looking, most polished thing ever. Like it doesn't have to be. It's a resource. It's not the actual lesson. Now, middle school, I realize that they may want you, high school, to make it the actual lesson, but the premise still holds. Don't go super crazy on it. Talk over your video, your screen. It'll be a lot less work, and it'll be more effective. Cool.
Chris, can you go over briefly how to make sure that the permissions are correct for individual files that we make?
Sure. Yeah, totally.
And Chris, really quickly, what was the other slide thing? It was Slide Mania and
Carnival.
Carnival. Thank you.
So when we look at this, so like, let me jump over here to this one. So I'm in this folder with all my templates. So if I wanted to share the folder, I would click the down arrow next to the folder and I would do share. So this is going to open up. Now I can invite people specifically, right? So if you are, inviting teachers, whatever, if you are in elementary school, you can do the TD dash, and then you'll see at the elementary level, we have these Hapara groups. Schoology might give you the same type of thing. It's essentially a group email for the class. I don't know how Schoology handles your rosters, like if you have, bulk email groups, but at the elementary level, we have these. So this was Jenna Volpe's class from last year. So if I wanted to, I could, like if I were to select hers, then what would happen would be every child in that class would now be an editor on this document. And if I wanted to, I could change them just to be viewers, right? No, sorry, not document, folder. They would be an editor on the folder, meaning they could add to the folder, they could delete from the folder, they can look at the folder, whatever. If I wanted to, let's say I just wanted to make it accessible to like a broad group of people. I don't know specifically who they are. Or middle school, high school, maybe you don't have an easy group email address. You're just like, I'm going to make this thing public. Down here, it says restricted, meaning only people listed here can see it. But if I change this, it literally says change to Scarsdale Public Schools. I can change this to be Scarsdale Public Schools or anyone with the link. So this would require students to be logged in to view it, view the folder and access the folder. This could be anyone in the world can access the folder. But when you do anyone with the link, it defaults to viewer, which is good. That means anyone with the link can see the folder, but can't change the folder. You theoretically could make anyone with the link an editor, but you should never do that because then that would mean anyone in the world could theoretically jack up your folder. It's not your drive. It's literally just the particular thing we're sharing. In this case, slide templates. The same holds true for Scarsdale Public Schools. Defaults to be a viewer. You can decide to make them an editor if you wanted to, but again, that would mean that every 6,000 people or whatever it is between staff and students have it. Sharing something in bulk like this, leave it as viewer. But then what happens is, like, if I copy it, if I say done, now if I give this link out to anybody, I don't have to worry. I could add 1 million files to this, then they all become public to anyone with the link because I've done that. I've made that change. And if I want to get rid of that, say, you know what, I don't want Scarsdale Public Schools to see my slide templates. I just go back to sharing, I hit change, and I just restrict it. And now it's just me.
So restricted is just you. So we can go back in and check our files and check folders to see what permissions we put on them.
And if you notice, the one thing is, if you look at these, some of these have, you can easily check to see what is shared. Like there's nothing here. This one looks like it might be shared because it's got those little people next to it. So if I click on this one and I click share, let me see. Yep. So that particular one is shared with 2 people. So the folder is not shared with anyone, but for some reason I shared just that file with 2 people. And that's how you can tell that this one is shared, but these aren't, because it's got the little share people there.
So anytime a file is shared, it'll have those little people?
Or a folder. Like if I were to come in here and if I were to do the share, and if I just turn this to anyone with Scarsdale, right here next to the little caret, in a second, you'll see the little 2 people thing will show up. Did I not say done? Yeah. It'll show up in a second. Let me refresh. Yeah, see it's right there? That means the folder is shared, and now you notice that and now everything has that on it, because if I set the folder to be shared, then everything below it is shared, which again goes to that organization. Now, if I turn the sharing off and I restrict it, this is restricted to me or anyone I manually add to it, like anyone I invite to it. Now the little share icon disappears from all of them except for this one, because this one happened to have been shared independently. That's why this one still has it. And this is the one that's shared with Vivian and Anne-Marie separately. So it's restricted, and it's restricted to those 2 people. And that's basically how you do it. And then you can do it the same. So it works the same for folders or files. And really the key is just looking for these little icons. And so if you wanted to, you have a folder called class assignments. You make that folder available to anyone with a Scarsdale ID, or if you're elementary, you invite the whole class group to it. And then you just dump all your assignments in there or your resources or whatever you want. And then the kids automatically have access to it. Cool.
Thank you.
No problem. Other questions? Comments, queries, anything? All right, cool. So now what we're going to do is we're going to talk a little bit about the student side of this, because you actually, and this is what's kind of nice about this. I think it's nice, maybe I'm wrong, but the student side is really easy in a sense, because you have just been the students and you have created these things. So you will assist your students in much the same way. Like you have organized your own drive and you have created a structure. So like middle school, high school, you may say to them, hey, listen, don't just dump it in the Schoology folder, or don't just dump it wherever. I want you to make a folder called, Mrs. Blood's section 2 class or something. Share that folder with me, dump all your stuff for this class in there. You know how to create this. So you can say to students, listen, I want you to give me a simple 3-slide presentation with your favorite things. You know, older kids, talk over it. Make me the 3 slides, talk over it, and share it with me. So everything that you've done or everything that you do and you create for your kids is in essence an assignment that they can then do back to you. They can use the same tool, the same technique, the same premise. You just change the content. Instead of making a presentation for open house, they make a presentation about erosion. You know, instead of making recording a presentation about open house, they record a presentation about reading the weather, reading the world. You know, and they can record on the iPad. They can talk over a picture. K12, show them how to screen record, and they could literally just put up a picture and explain what that picture is. And that's it. Simple, clean video. They can upload it to Drive. The other thing that I want to just make sure we touch on in terms of organization is calendar, because everyone will have access to Google Calendar. So when you're doing Google Calendar, I've created a event, right? We'll call it STI, STI demo. Now, I can set the time for this. I can make it a Zoom meeting. So if this is for office hours, if you're a specials teacher and you're all virtual, you can essentially, once you get your schedule, you could make one recurring Zoom link for like the entire year. And then what you can do is you can add guests, and then it will put it on their calendar. Now, one of the quirks with this is, and I'll use my son, he goes to Quaker Ridge. Now, if I make this a Zoom link, I'll make it a Zoom meeting, I get this little pop-up. So I can come over here and I can, change things. I can, enable join before host if I want. I can do participants muted. Now K5, everything should be signed into Scarsdale Schools because everybody K12 is running on the same sign-in. You don't have to automatically record if you don't want to. Include link in the location field, and then you click continue. Now, populates all this. So you can add any other information you want. When you add the guests, you could add the individual person or you could add like the group, right? Now, you notice there's 21 people. Now, this is last year's class. And then I would click save. It's going to ask me if I want to send the invitations. Now, this is one of those subtle quirks about calendar with the kids. 3rd through 12th grade, send the invitation. They're going to get an email that says, dude, you've been invited to this thing. K12 does not have email. So K12, you would click don't send, but it's still going to show up on their Google Calendar as an event that they were invited to. So even if you don't send it, you can still place events on the calendar. And it doesn't have to be a Zoom meeting. I'm just going to throw this away. You could just toss up, you can create don't forget, watch the moon. I don't know, right? Spell things correctly, because that would be awkward. Don't forget, watch the moon. You're going to go to add guests. Let's say I do, TD, invite Ms. Volpe's group again. So that would be 21 people. And let's say I come over here and I want to do the time. And I'm going to say, I don't know, let's say at 4:30 to 5:30, right? And I'm going to say not today. I'm going to say Wednesday. So then it's going to say, don't forget to watch the moon. Here, I'll actually move it down a little bit so it's not being blocked by my son's tryout for the golf team, the socially distanced golf team. So you see how there's like this shaded area? So that's showing me where I'm going to place it. So now the minute I click save, it would ask if I want to send the invitations. I'm not even going to click save on this because these are old kids. This is an old group. But you can see that 21 people would get that. So those 21 students then would open up their calendar and they would see something like this. Like, I've been invited to this webinar, which is why it's outlined in white and not filled in. So that's how you can place events on students' Google calendars. So you can have them organize their drives much the same way you would. K12, a little bit different. I'll show you Seesaw in a second about how that would be a little bit different in terms of the file organization. But calendar, everyone can check calendar and check for these boxes with these invitations. Kids can click on them. And actually, let me X out of this.
Chris, can I ask you a quick question?
Of course, go ahead.
Okay, so you make the group you just had, the one that was shaded, and you make it, let's say you make it a Zoom meeting, and then you do another appointment for a different group, or it could be the same group, and you make it a Zoom meeting. Is it always the same Zoom ID and password?
No, but what you can do is this. Every time you open up a calendar invitation and make it a Zoom meeting, it's a unique password. What you can do is you can just go to zoom.us, and when you go in, let's say, I'll use the specialist teachers as an example at the elementary level, right? They're going to have different classes every day, but in theory, they're going to have the same time every day, or at least the same time every day, meaning Monday through Friday, they may be at different times, but every Monday might be the same time, right? So what you can do is when you go to schedule a meeting, STI demo, what you can do is, and let's call this office hours, right? Because you know you're always going to have the same office hours. And we're going to have, the office hours are going to be like, 3 o'clock for an hour, let's say 3 to 4. I'm going to make it a recurring meeting. Now, this is going to happen, maybe not daily. Let's say it's going to happen weekly, every Tuesday, or every Tuesday and Thursday. What you then can do is, just for the sake of simplicity, is you can literally come over here and then just go all the way over to like July 1st. And then you have now set your office hours for the year as a single link. You come down here, you decide what your settings are. You know, do you want them muted? Do you want like to enable join before host, or do you want them to have to basically be in a waiting room before you show up? You know, you do the authenticated users, sign into Scarsdale Schools. Then you click save. This is now created in Zoom, a recurring link. Every Tuesday and Thursday, 3 to 4 till July 1st. Now you can add this to Google Calendar. And when I click the Google Calendar button, it is now going to add this to every single Tuesday and Thursday, right? This says February, so you can always change that. If sometimes Zoom doesn't, the duration, you could always go to custom and do it longer. If it's always going to be the same kids you invite, boom, invite them right here, right? TD-Volpe. Then theoretically, those 21 kids would be invited to those office hours every single time. It'll show up on their calendar every single Tuesday and Thursday the entire time. Alternately, if you didn't want that because you were going to invite different kids every time, you don't invite anybody. You just click save. We're going to do all events, meaning we're going to do, or this and all following. I like to do that one. I'm going to say, okay, so it's been saved. Now, every Tuesday and Thursday, from here till eternity, I have office hours. I can then decide that on this day, I am going to just have Vanessa show up. Then when I click save, do I want it to do this event, this and all following? I say just this event because this is the only event I'm inviting just you to. I click OK, and if I send you the invitation, you get an email. But even if I click don't send, you are still going to have essentially a white box like this show up on your Google Calendar saying you've been invited to office hours this day. So you could have a single link that you could have recurring from now until July 1st. You can invite your entire class group to it. You can invite nobody to it. You just put it on Google Calendar and then go for each event and say, oh, I'm going to have these 3 kids that day, or maybe you're doing like A through L and M through Z or something like that, you know, and then you can sort of organize that however you want to organize that, but that's how you can then structure that, where you can create. And again, I know like sort of elementary, middle school, high school is functioning a little bit different in terms of like office hours and schedule and stuff. Like elementary school, if you're if you're virtual only, there's like a half an hour office hour every day in the afternoon. Those teachers can literally make a Zoom link Monday through Friday from here until July 1st called office hours. It's one link, it's one Zoom room. They could stick it on the recurring Google Calendar and invite their whole class, and then it shows up for every kid's calendar, and every kid knows that there's office hours that day at that time. Every invitation will have the Zoom link in it, and then it's just all there. It's sitting right in front of them.
So let's say that, thank you so much. Let's say that I set that up, being that it's so tight to the school year, I still don't have rosters, which is driving me crazy. My classrooms are set up. I also have set up the calendar. Will those kids, if I don't individually invite, once they are added to my Google Classroom, they can click on the calendar and see the events? Will they get an invite to the Zoom?
What you would do in that situation is when you come over to this for Classroom, because Classroom actually creates its own calendar, you would basically take this, and when you go in and when you go to edit it, you don't put it, like if I go to edit this right now, it's on my Christopher Casale calendar. It's on my main user calendar. I could change that, and I could, Heathcote Tech, this happens to be one of my Google Classrooms, or this is like a Google Classroom. I could stick it on the Heathcote Tech calendar, and then anyone who's using that Google Classroom will see it.
Oh, thank you.
It'll show up on theirs. Now, and it's a good point, like rosters, this whole thing is kind of crazy, but this is that organization. You could prep this ahead of time, create your Zoom links, create your schedule. Everything is sitting there in calendar. You just don't invite anyone to it. And then once you get your Hapara group, you can type in their names. Or once you get your Google Classroom set up, you can switch it to that calendar. And then you just press save, and it'll say, do you want this event, all event? You know, now it's just as a different calendar. And that's how you do that. So you can build this ahead of time, much like with the organization with like the drive folders and stuff. Build it ahead of time, and then you have an understanding of your own organizational structure, and then you can then direct the kids, hey, listen, save this here, save this there, stuff like that. Cool. Now, real quick, I will show the Seesaw, and then we'll wrap up because then I have another meeting to go to. This is super fun. So many things. So for the K12 folks, people using Seesaw, and theoretically other people can use Seesaw too, but when you go to, I'm going to get myself set up first before I share my screen. Okay, so for Seesaw, similarly, it functions similarly, except Seesaw being K12, you're going to do a little bit more work for the kids ahead of time. And if this is your Seesaw class, you have this little folder icon. You can click the folder icon, and you could add folders, and you can manage those folders. So you can create different folders. I don't know, we'll call it STI demo. I'll make it brown, why not? And they have it, right? There's no items in there. When you go to create a, well, no, I don't want student work. I got to switch to my teacher account. So what happens when you're someone like me and I have teacher, admin, and student views, I always forget which view I'm in a given moment. So for this, if I'm going to post assign an activity, I can assign an activity, and let's say I do this K demo one, and I want to assign it, and I've got my directions in there. I'm going to assign it. Now I'm going to assign it to my class, but instead of just assigning it to the class, I can select it, and then I can go to edit students, folders, and skills. And then I can decide that, you know what? I want to put it into the STI demo folder. For the kids, they'll just see it as an assigned piece of work, but it'll be organized for them, not only in their own like linear journal, but it'll actually then also be in just that folder. What's also cool is like with the students, now this goes for Hapara too, which is why I like Hapara more than Google Classroom, is because Hapara gives you a little bit more granular control. You can assign, I think Google Classroom you can assign to just some kids also, but I find it easier in Hapara, is you can uncheck this and just assign this to just these 2 kids. And you put this in that folder. So only these 2 kids will see that project or that activity, and that activity will automatically be saved into that folder that you've created. And then at the bottom, it says create folder. And then it would create it, create a folder if you want to make a new one while you were assigning the project. Click the check, and it would be saved. So you can, this concept of organization and file organization and folder organization works K-5, K-12, because you as a teacher need it to organize your lessons and your resources. Then the same practice and premise holds for your students. They should be functioning, if they're 2nd through 5th and they're using Hapara, they have those subject area folders. Get them in the habit of using those. If you're at the middle school, you might have them make a Schoology folder or something, or however that works. Same thing with the high school. Like you can talk them through organization and drive. Cool. Calendar, Gmail, like use the tools that are familiar to you and that are built for those purposes. So there's not going to be a ton of homework, but basically the last thing is going to be this. For tomorrow, spend a little bit of time, use either your iPad to do a screen recording to talk over that presentation that you made earlier today, or you can use Screencastify, or you can use whatever. But the idea is don't spend more than like, I don't know, an hour max. Because the whole point should be, you should be able to get done a simple slideshow that conveys simple, clean, tight information and be able to use it in multiple different ways, like in an hour. Like essentially 2 prep periods get you a live synchronous, asynchronous options, follow-up independent work, all from the same source material. So try recording yourself reading over or talking over the slides you created earlier today. Cool? And I will see everyone tomorrow bright and squirrely at 9 a.m.